This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It is Wednesday, July 31st, 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann. In studio with me is my co-host, my son, fellow investigator, Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Folks are in for a wonderful program tonight, 3 hours of unbiased and uncensored news, analysis, and information, quality information. Information that you need to know in these perilous times. We've got a great show lined up for you tonight. We've got, for the first hour, John Moore. That's John Moore, the LibertyMan.com. And the second hour, great friend of the show, Mr. Standeo.com. Meanwhile, for new listeners, and folks, I just want to give a shout out, if you will, to new listeners, or to listeners, I should say, checking in with us here the last couple of days. I want to say hello to Glendon from the listening from the Republic of Panama, Sarah in Cook-Sawi in the Hudson Valley, New York. We've been there, actually, Joe. Aaron from Sterling, Illinois. Gary from London, Kentucky. Christy, suburban Des Moines, Iowa. Joe from Essex, United Kingdom, just a mere 12 miles east of London. Glenn from Northeast Thailand. Glad you're listening. Sharon, Western Massachusetts. Cliff from Central Queensland, Australia. Want to just say hello, welcome you to tonight's program. Folks, we broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. And that's 1 o'clock a.m. at Greenwich Mean Time. If you're so inclined to follow that, you can find us on the internet at HomelandSecurityUS.com. It's HomelandSecurityUS.com. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us. Thank you for your belief and your trust in us as we walk through this minefield of current events together. And just can't say enough about our listeners, our extended family. I want to tell you that we really appreciate this. Also want to thank Blog Talk Radio. I want to thank Blog Talk Radio. They've actually picked us as one of the staff picks, and we're very humbled by that. And I want to say thank you to the fine folks at BTR for doing just that. And I'm glad you're with us and enjoying the program. With that, Joe, what do we have on tonight?
We have John Moore on with us right now.
Beautiful.
Mr. Moore, can you hear me?
I hear you fine. How's my audio?
Fantastic.
All right.
And great. You're looking fine too, John.
I got my camera covered up, so I know you can't see me.
Wait, are you doing this in your pajamas? No, we are actually.
Tiger stripe fatigues, actually.
Okay. Well, it's great to have you on, my friend.
Good to be here.
Yeah. Now, folks, if you're wondering who John Moore is, you shouldn't be wondering. Of course, John Moore, he's been a fighter, and he's been a warrior in the fight against terrorism since 1967. He's still fighting it today. John, Vietnam veteran. Imagine this: imagine walking patrol in Vietnam at night alone, looking for terrorist booby traps. Well, that's exactly what John did in Vietnam, and he flew 57. John, is that right? 57 combat missions over Vietnam?
Yeah, they promised me flight pay, by the way, which I never did receive.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, how about
I got my wings? I got my wings and my air medal, though.
Okay. Well, that's good. And I'm sure you know in the frequent flyer miles. But you went on to join the Green Beret at Fort Bragg, and of course you trained to invade the Middle East, and you did classified studies of Middle Eastern terrorists for the Special Forces. Special operations, covert operations, psychological operations, undercover operations, and one of my favorites, surveillance operations.
Oh, I know.
And you were, and this is one thing I didn't know about you. You were a homicide detective and also a private investigator, a private detective.
Right. Well, most of my adult life, these past 40 years, I've been involved in the private sector. Some in the. I was a homicide detective initially, working for the public defender system back in 1973 for 5 years, and investigated my first murder in 1973. I still have one homicide in my case inventory. And I'm also a paralegal, so I've been involved in complex trial preparation involving as much as $100 million at stake in the private sector.
Wow.
So it's been a career that's gone a lot of different directions, as you just read off there. A good career, a fun career with some very satisfying and gratifying work. I've proven several men innocent of murder they were charged with because I found the guys who really did do it. And it's been a great career so far, and I'm looking forward to more years of being a speaker, talk show host.
Yes.
Kind of backing off. I've done enough murder to suit me for a lifetime, quite frankly.
Well, I got to ask you one question though. You just said something here, because I've got a file on my desk that has been here all of my. Well, not all of my, nearly all of my career as a private investigator. It's a homicide that I have never taken off my desk. I promised the family I would bring the killer to justice. I know who it is. The police know who it is. The district attorney knows who it is. But that said, let me ask you: do you have a case like that where it's hunted?
I've worked. The case that's still in my inventory it's now a 9 or 10-year-old cold case, and it's very parallel. I know who killed this girl. The police know who killed her. The coroner, who's a friend of mine, we worked on murders going back to the mid-'70s together. My investigation has found evidence that the police did not find. I hope to soon be making an appointment to do a presentation to the prosecuting attorney, his assistant, the coroner, and the chief of police in the community where this happened, and turn over my findings to them so they can do their police thing and hopefully file charges against the murderer.
Wow.
And bring some justice.
Well, and that's it too. My girl was murdered in 1979. So it's a long time to wait for justice. Her father has since passed on. Her mother's in ill health, and the murderer is. In fact, I sat face to face from him about 6 months ago and told him that I knew he did it. And it's very frustrating. Good luck to you, by the way, John.
Thank you, and good luck to you on yours, Doug. It's people who never. I mean, we watch TV shows and movies, but until you've been involved in a homicide investigation, you really don't know. They pick you up and carry you away. They take over your life. And
well, that's a good, exactly.
Oh, well, they do. Exactly. I mean, if you're doing it right, that's what happens, and it becomes all-consuming.
Yes.
And that's the way it should be, and it can be no other way. If you're a professional investigator doing it the way it should be done, it should consume you. It should pick you up and carry you away and become the complete focus of your life, to the detriment of other things, quite frankly. But that's the way it is. That's our chosen profession.
Exactly, and you're a man after my own heart. I got to tell you, I feel like we're brothers in the sense in that it's just a horrendous, not a horrendous feeling. It's an all-consuming issue. You're exactly right, and boy, people just don't understand. It's not like television, that's for sure.
No, well, they have typically an hour to wrap up what they're doing, or in the case of a movie, 90 minutes to 2 hours to wrap up something that I've never done a homicide investigation that took less than a year ever.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And
if you do, if you're, I'm not sure if I would say fortunate, but if it does, it's kind of it kind of raises questions by itself. That short length of time. But I understand. Wow. Well, with that, John, we're going to take us tonight. You've got a very successful, and ladies and gentlemen, John Moore's got a very successful radio program, and he's got a very, very well-read website. Once again,
thelibertyman.com.
Right. But where are you going to take us tonight, John?
Well, I was looking at the focus could be apparently the consequences of a coronal mass ejection, which is a natural event, or the consequences of a human-created parallel, which would be a electromagnetic pulse device, and what the consequences of that could be for North America or the world in the case of a coronal mass ejection. And that's something we can certainly talk about.
Yeah, that's been in the news as of late. I saw a clip on Fox News talking about a third of the sun shed part of itself and was heading towards the Earth at 2 million miles per hour. And I also want to let you know I read your 4-page PDF report on the Gulf Stream stopping. The Gulf Stream has stopped. And folks, I would urge everybody to go on to go search for the PDF, The Gulf Stream Has Stopped by John R. Moore, and read this short document, short but very informative. And it talks about how the jet stream has stopped and how this is affecting the weather and how it's going to continue to affect things. And this brings us to what we're seeing with the sun today. We know we're in a solar max as the sun cycles every 11 years. Do you see, and there was just news yesterday or today about a near miss with a powerful CME.
Right.
And I've been seeing that there's questions to the validity of that report. Have you come across any findings on that?
Well, when I am really interested in such matters, I talk to my friend Professor McCann. He's a scientist. What am I, a homicide detective? But the scientists do share concerns, and Professor McCann is concerned also about the consequences of a coronal mass ejection hitting the Earth. Something I just found out recently, it wouldn't just be 12 time zones, half the planet. It's possibly a severe coronal mass ejection could bounce around the entire planet, knocking out all power grids on all 24 time zones. So as to something missing us, well, I'm glad it did miss. The big concern, gentlemen, is a duplication of what happened in 1859, just before the Civil War started. It's called a Carrington event. And a Carrington event in 2013 would be absolutely disastrous for most of the planet. The Carrington event is named after the scientist who figured out what happened. It was a coronal mass ejection in 1859 that was so powerful it set telegraph offices on fire. The telegraph lines acted as massive antennas drawing in that coronal mass ejection energy into the telegraph offices, setting fires. Of course, electricity was just something in university science labs. There was no power grid at that time in 1859. What we have now with our nationwide power grid and these very large, very expensive transformers that are no longer made in the United States, and there's only 3 made a week for the entire planet, that's what's really at risk. Former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, addressed the House, I believe, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, attempting to get legislation introduced and passed that would put in place the mechanism to protect our power grid. He's been making these attempts for a number of years with no success so far. And while I don't agree with Newt Gingrich's politics in general, I do applaud his efforts in this area. And it's been said, gentlemen, that nature does not like a vacuum, and we do have genuine enemies on this planet. The North Koreans, the Iran, China, Russia, they're not our friends across the water. They are genuine enemies. And despite having what's often referred to as the most powerful military on the planet, which it probably is, when it comes to this part of our national defense, we're just absolutely naked and vulnerable because our power grid is not protected. There's any number of ways. Tramp steamers could be off the East Coast or the Gulf Coast, especially the Gulf Coast, since we're not monitoring with NORAD is not monitoring that part of our country anymore, or the West Coast, launching fairly primitive Scud-type missiles that could get up 20, 30 miles above the planet, set off a nuclear device or several nuclear devices, knocking out part of or all of the United States, depending on how many devices and how large and how many there, and where they were placed. It's a very severe, vulnerable part to our entire national defense. Why NORAD is shut down monitoring our Gulf Coast is beyond me. It certainly should be a high priority, but for reasons I don't quite understand, they've decided not to do that. So it's a clear and present danger, gentlemen. coronal mass ejections and electromagnetic pulse. In fact, at my website, another free download there, Joe and Doug, is the complete government report. The government appointed a panel of scientists and engineers to determine the consequences of a electromagnetic pulse attack or a coronal mass ejection. I've got the entire report there. It's a free download. The first 80 pages is what people really need to read in terms of figuring out what will happen to the United States if and when that would happen.
John, is that the EMP Commission Executive Report
yes,
from
sir.
2008? Okay.
That's it.
Folks, that's on the right-hand side, in the right-hand column, navigational column of thelibertyman.com. Again, I would urge everyone to visit thelibertyman.com and take a look or download that EMP Commission Executive Report 2008. It's an eye-opener.
We attended a conference with the authors 1 second after of the book, 1 second after, and watched their presentation on the EMP threat and vulnerabilities, and understood just what you said, that there was and is an easy way to secure our electrical grid through these parts, and they could have been developed and completed within 2 years, is what was told to us, and yet still no action has been taken.
Right. It is easy. It is effective. It's not cheap. It would be tens of millions of dollars, possibly hundreds of millions of dollars, compared to what?
Yeah, compared to complete anarchy. I mean, the effects of such an event would be just incredible.
And the Attorney General himself, his travel bill, I'm sure, for the year would cover that. So he just
possibly.
A little.
Well, the estimates vary, but they're horrendous as to loss of life in the United States. No electricity for a year means typically the estimates run 95% of all the people in this country will be dead in a year. Due to a number of reasons, mainly disease and lack of clean water.
Okay.
People will start dying fairly quickly. All diabetics who require refrigerated insulin will be dead in 30 days or less. All people who require any prescription pharmaceutical product to stay alive would be dead in 30 to 60 days. Now, that's a big chunk of people right there, gentlemen. I mean, it's a huge number of people. Popular fiction, I've read Fortune's book, goes into a lot of the nuances of people dealing with these consequences, and they're worth reading. Fortune's book is probably the best that I've read. I've probably read 2,000-3,000 pages of various fictional accounts of the consequences of electromagnetic pulse attack. They all have their own merit, and they're all worth reading for entertainment value, if nothing else. But it would be the end of the world as we know it, and there's no doubt about that. The government, as we know it, would cease to exist, except perhaps small villages. When I say villages, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 people, especially a village. And there's towns around in the United States like this, gentlemen. They had their own independent power generating plant. Many of them were running in the 1960s and the 70s. Most of them are no longer in service. A friend of mine, when he wanted to relocate from a major city, St. Louis, he searched and found a community about 60, 70 miles from St. Louis that had a fully functional power generating plant. And he picked that community as his new hometown specifically for that reason, that it had a fully functioning electric generating plant that could take care of that little community.
Interesting. Well, John, clear something up for me if you can, or if you don't mind here. It's my understanding, for example, the average person that we'll say that they've got a portable generator in their garage, the one you could buy at Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever big box store. If there was an event like a CME type event or an EMP, would that event render? Is it true that event would render such?
No, here's
devices?
the answer. And this is, once you understand what I'm saying, hear what I'm saying, you'll completely understand it. First of all, airplanes are hit by lightning all the time. They are, and routinely, almost nothing happens. Some minor problems, but I'm not aware of an aircraft ever having crashed because of a lightning strike. That may have happened, but if it is, it's a rare event. The reason is the airplane's not grounded. Now, automobiles, trucks, motorcycles, almost all of them have rubber between them and the ground, so they're not grounded. And in fact, the Commission's report does address motor vehicles and the fact that if they're running, there might be minor problems causing you to have to pull off the side of the road, turn off the car, start it up, and it'll run with possibly some minor accessory problems. If the vehicle's not running, it probably won't affect it at all. So getting back to your generator situation, if the generator is not running and it's not grounded, which means if it has rubber between it and any other surface, typically those generators are in a metal frame. So if the metal frame had plywood between it or a carpet between it and the ground, it would very likely would still function. And that's true of most other electronic devices. If they're not plugged into the grid, if they don't have an antenna connected to them and are not grounded, then there's a high likelihood they won't be affected. But if a computer is plugged into the grid or any other electronic device plugged into the grid, or in the case of a radio has an antenna, the grid itself becomes an antenna and directs that energy into the electronic device and destroys it. So the equipment does not necessarily have to be in a Faraday cage. Obviously, that's the best and highest way to protect any electronic device. A Faraday cage is basically a metal box that has shielding in the form of non-conductive material. It could be a blanket or cardboard between the metal box and the electronic device that protects it from the signal. Even in the absence of that, if the device is not plugged in, does not have an antenna attached to it, it's highly likely it won't be affected. Okay.
Well, thank you for that. That explains, we're separating the hype from the fiction here, or the hype and fiction from facts. So this is good. That's good news then, I think. Well,
it's good, but let's give people some help here that really keep saving some lives. First of all, it doesn't matter if your PC or computer is toast. It doesn't matter because the internet will be toast also. My concern is people having water. And if you live in a country and you have a well, if you have a second pump, either above ground pump or submersible pump to replace the one that gets cooked when the EMP hits, that could be a huge difference between having all the potable water you want and having to ration it and go to great lengths of manual labor to get potable water for yourself and your loved ones. Water is going to be an issue very, very quickly for everybody in the country. And that's what's going to cause the majority of deaths, will be lack of clean drinking water. I wrote an account, gentlemen, of the Bataan Death March written by the general who was in charge of those men. And imagine yourself walking along a road there in the Philippines. You're at sea level. It's 95, 100 degrees. You haven't had a drink of water for 2 days. And you've got men with bayonets threatening to kill you if you fall out of line. You fall out of line anyway to get a drink out of a mud puddle, and upon threat of being bayoneted. That's what thirst will do to a man. And it's all-consuming. We talk about a homicide being all-consuming. Well, thirst is all-consuming. And the first drink you take of bad water is a one-way ticket to diarrhea, dehydration, and death. And that's reality. That's my reality.
Yeah, regardless of how natural disaster would come in the way of cutting off electricity, power, running water, that is one of the biggest threats to survival, is how clean is your drinking water.
Exactly.
You can pick up so many diseases, so many problems, and it will pretty much incapacitate you. You'll be, even if you're still alive, you'll be sick as a dog. And everybody knows how that is. When you have the flu, you don't want to go to work or do anything. Imagine having to survive under those conditions.
Well, John, let me ask you this, because a lot of people who listen to our show, we can't store 1,000 gallons of water, or some of us don't have access to a well. What do you do? What would you recommend a person do to prepare?
Well, a gravity feed water filter is clearly something people would need. I do offer Berkey water filters at my website. You need a supply of maybe several thousand paper coffee filters, or at least clean T-shirts, something to pre-filter water that's got particulate in it so you don't clog up your Berkey. There's two parts to this question. Getting access to water is part of it. Getting access to clean water is the second part. Unless you're out in the desert, most people are going to have access to water. It'd be surface water would be the most common thing. Rivers, streams, ponds, lakes, and so forth. Surface water of questionable nature. So if you have access to surface water, that's half the program. But then you need a gravity feed water filter to make that water potable, so you can drink it and be healthy, as opposed to drinking it and getting sick and dying.
Understood. And of course, neighbors' swimming pools, and
there you go.
Right. Yeah. And it's, folks, you have to think out of the box. I believe, when a disaster strikes of this magnitude, you're going to have to be kind of think out of the box. And well, we live in a first world country, and most of the planet, we have 6.5 billion people on the planet. Most human energy on this planet in July of 2013 is spent on two things: carrying firewood and carrying water. That's what most human energy is spent on right now, just the way it was a millennium ago. We get so used to our luxury of turning a tap and having clean water to drink, but most people on this planet will never see a flush commode, let alone sit on. On there for a moment. I think perhaps our Skype connection might have gone, but think about that, ladies and gentlemen. That is a dose of reality right there, and think about the fact that the human activity carrying firewood.
Okay,
there we go. Okay,
I was off the air there for a moment. I was just Skype thing. Yeah. Anyway, gentlemen, I do recommend Fortune's book. The films I've seen, most of the films aren't all that good, but there's some value to some of these apocalyptic movies. Most of them are overdone in terms of the Hollywood aspect of them.
But as usual.
But it's a business. But people need to get down to the basics. This is not complex. To stay alive, you need clean water, you need food, you need shelter. You do not want to be near a densely populated area. I would say 50,000 people or more. Being around 50,000 plus people who don't have running water and electricity, police, fire, and paramedics, telephones at work, I really don't want to be there myself.
Understood. Well, John, that kind of brings me to my next question, if I can ask this. What are we looking at here? We're inundated with and we have been inundated with the news about the ammunition purchases, the DHS arming up, the paramilitarization of our police departments. What are we looking at here? What's going on in your estimation or in your research? What have you found? What's going on here?
Well, my private sources, one man was at a Army post in California. He walked into a warehouse about the size, about 6,000 square foot warehouse, packed floor to ceiling with .22 caliber long rifle ammunition, which, of course, except for the little bit the Army marksmanship Olympic rifles use, is something the Army simply does not use. More recent reports, just in the last 10 days or so, are showing the government buying 7.62 by 39, which is no longer used by the communists, but was a popular caliber for the communist militaries for decades. That they're buying those up, and the Makarov round, which is a pistol round, no longer used by the Soviets either. But both calibers have been very, very popular with American men and women for the rifles and pistols that they've been buying. So we've got the government competing with the private sector for these types of ammunition. It's very scary. It's very scary because the intent cannot be good. the consequences of it cannot be good. And of course, I teach concealed carry training, and I use .22 caliber in my classes, and I go through 1,400 rounds in one afternoon with 10 students. So I consume a lot of that ammunition in my classes, and it's gotten to the point where I may have to discontinue classes or for some period of time, maybe this fall, just due to lack of ammunition.
Is this backdoor gun control? I mean, or is
what good are the guns without ammo? Right.
Well, yeah, that's true. But I'm kind of thinking too, if this is not just taking it out of the marketplace, what are they intending to use it? Who are they intending to use it against?
Well, the government's got all the high-powered ammunition they need. They don't need .22 caliber ammunition for their own purposes. It's just being warehoused, and I wouldn't be surprised if they dug pits and buried it or sold it overseas. That's ubiquitous. You can go to the most remote Brazilian village, and they'll know what .22 caliber ammunition is. So the people behind this, and I know you probably addressed this, Doug and Joe yourselves, it's a spiritual war ultimately. There is such a thing as evil. I've seen evil up close and personal, and there really is evil in this world. And ultimately, that's what this battle is going to be against. Almost all the men and women who work for the U.S. government, state and local governments are good people, many of them Christians. But at the very, very top, we have people who are truly evil, and I'm absolutely convinced of that.
I am too. We are as well. I mean, both Joe and I are convinced after researching and investigating in our contacts. You know what, John? I got to tell you, one of our my DHS contact actually said that they do. There's an occult type ritual that the high level. I mean, I'm talking about the mid level. I mean, you'd never know this if you're a regular, normal DHS agent, boots on the ground. You wouldn't know this, but at the higher levels, there are some occult rituals. And we had a program. I think it was on Monday when the girl economist came on, and he was saying that before the stock market opens in certain areas, he witnessed some groups engage in Babylonian type prayer services.
Really?
It's just incredible, isn't it? I mean, wow.
It is. Well, these groups, these secret societies have been in place for many, many centuries, and it's generational in nature. They take care of their own. Many of these businesses are generational in nature, with basically not that different from a monarchy, quite frankly. In the way that these bloodlines are in control and remain in control.
Yeah. And as my dad said, this is a lot of stuff we cover, the evil versus the good, the spiritual battle and the spiritual aspect of things. I know you talk about a lot of things pertaining to, from Planet X to, the militarization of the American police force to the foreign troops. What is on your radar do you see as the most dangerous thing that we face as a country right now?
Two things. First of all, the H7N9, Hotel 7, November 9 flu. The fatality rate is about 60%, keeping in mind that the Spanish flu in 1918, the fatality rate there was 2%, and tens of millions of people died in the 1918 flu epidemic. The H7N9 flu virus is almost without a doubt out of a laboratory, and it's a biological weapon. Natural flu viruses simply can't kill 6 out of 10 people. I have private confirmation just in the last few days that it is in fact in Mexico. We have unconfirmed information that it may be in a southern U.S. city. I don't want to talk about that publicly until I get some independent confirmation, but with the way people travel and move about, if it's as close as Mexico, it will soon be in the lower 48, no doubt whatsoever. People most at risk are people diabetics. It doesn't seem to be any age-specific relevance to this particular flu virus. Diabetics are particularly at risk, and anybody who has a compromised immune system is at risk, which is a huge number of Americans these days with our poor diets and our poor health habits. A tremendous amount of Americans, both adults as well as children, have compromised immune systems. So that's number one.
Okay.
Number two, of course, would be a overt or covert attack by a foreign power. We already covered EMP to a certain extent, and we know for a fact, and it's been talked about and I've confirmed this up and down, back and forth, that there are tens of thousands of both Russians and other East European soldiers in the continental United States as we speak. Whatever event happens, I think the most likely thing is that the president will call upon our allies, the Russians, to help us in our time of need. And that's how it'll be portrayed. Most Americans will think that's a good thing, that the Russians are here to help us so that we can get past this crisis, whatever it might be, whether it's a flu virus or something else, and go to work Monday morning and draw a paycheck and be able to watch Monday Night Football. If it takes Russians on street corners with checkpoints to do that, most Americans will accept it.
That's a frightening thought.
reality,
yeah. But how can that possibly be, John, when we're looking at going toe-to-toe with Russia? Benghazi was truly a window into the arms running, the weapons running between northern Africa into Syria to destabilize Syria to the disadvantage of Russia, and that, of course, Putin was incensed over it. We're still pushing the destabilization of Syria.
Right.
Now how would this work out, where Obama would tap Putin or tap Russia and say, come on over and help us? I mean, how does that work?
Well, here's how it works. It happens, and Obama asks Putin to help us.
Well, it's that simple.
No, I mean, I don't want to be too flippant about this, but please recall the open mic incident with Obama talking to Medvedev. It's been almost 2 years ago, I believe. A statement he said on open mic that he didn't know was turned on. Tell Vladimir that after the election I'll have more flexibility, to paraphrase what he said, which I think was fairly close. That sounded like an underling reporting to the boss to me. That was my impression of that brief conversation to Medvedev, to pass that message along to Vladimir.
Okay. Yeah, I agree, and you're pretty close on that paraphrasing. So,
under the context of thinking he's not on an open mic either, makes it even worse, in my opinion. Saying something like that to another leader. And my dad asks this question all the time. Who is the president? We know he's a placeholder for an agenda, but
he's an empty suit. He's an empty suit doing what he's told to do, carrying the water for the people that really control him. The true people in control are nameless and faceless to the general public, and even to me. I mean, I know, mid-level management is what Obama is, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time dwelling on Hussein Obama, but the man's a dual national. To be president of the United States, you cannot be a dual national. He I don't know if he has a British passport or not, but he could have a British passport because his father was a British citizen by virtue of being a Kenyan citizen at that point in time, 40-something years ago.
Right.
And this is ignored and overlooked, but there was a Supreme Court decision in the 19th century that clearly stated a natural-born citizen has to have two things: be born on U.S. soil and have two American parents. That's it. Period. End of paragraph. Well, he may or may not have been born on American soil, but we all know he had one American parent, and that doesn't qualify him.
Right. Exactly. And you're right. I mean, I think we've pretty much exhausted the for our regular listeners. You folks know that Obama is not constitutionally eligible to hold the office, and quite frankly, and John, I think as a detective and myself, he as far as holding a security clearance or verification of his identity, we haven't seen anything. So, but that's fine. The third thing you mentioned the H7N9 flu virus, and of course having the Russians come in here. But what about the economy, John? I mean, there's.
I'm going to refer people to read the first chapter of Jim Rawls' book, Patriots Surviving, a novel of surviving the coming collapse. That's the underlying premise of his book, is a fast-moving economic collapse.
Okay. And Jim, he's a well-published author. In fact, we'll put up a link on our website to that.
Jim Rawls is one of my heroes. I interviewed him back in the mid-90s. He was just getting going. He didn't even have his first book really out yet, and this would have been about 98 or 99, somewhere in there. But a economic collapse is a clear and present danger. There's never been a country, to my knowledge, this large go through that kind of event. Closest we can come might be Germany, possibly in the 30s, where the size of Germany compared to the United States is not that close in terms of square miles of our population. But when the money itself loses value to the point where it's almost valueless, your society changes in very bad ways very quickly. Critical infrastructure needs people to keep it going. The power plants, the water, the sewage treatment, police, fire, paramedics, and so forth. The government will do whatever it takes to keep those people on the job. In fact, I do a family member used to work for Olin over in Illinois. They, of course, are known for making ammunition, but they're metal fabricators. And he told me, this is in the mid-'70s. I'm talking 1974, 75. We're looking at 30 years ago. About 3 machines set up to stamp out coin blanks, and how there was a secure part of the factory. They were set up to run a test run of these gold coin blanks, and once they ran a successful run of these gold coin blanks, they unbolted the machines, put them in a secure room, and locked it up. I have no doubt that the government will have to figure out a way to pay people that need to be paid to continue what's called continuity of government contingency planning. The rest of us, however, will be left in the cold. There's not going to be any gold coins for us. People, if they're concerned about that, they need to be looking at an independent lifestyle where they have and own their own source of water. They can grow their own food, have housing that they own and control, and hopefully in a community away from a major city with neighbors that they can depend on. Under those conditions, you have a much greater possibility of surviving a complete and total economic collapse, which would be an absolutely devastating thing for our country.
Exactly, and I've got to tell you this, and I'm sure this is nothing you don't know, but perhaps some of our listeners, the last time QE was announced, the devaluation of our dollar affected those third world nations and workers in third world nations where the devaluation actually caused them to not be able to eat as they normally would, and it caused untold number of deaths from starvation,
right,
from this country. So, this is not just a singular event here in the United States. This is affecting every country, wherever you might be listening to this broadcast. Okay, so what else are you most concerned with, and what should we be concerned with? Now, obviously, we need to talk about preparation, but we can do that independently. But I want to know what's keeping you up at night.
Oh, a private source told me last night that our ballistic missile defense people in the Mariana Islands were on full alert. And it caused me to get a couple of odds and ends that I've been putting off before I went to bed last night. I had to go make a trip to the hardware store.
I got to ask this. What'd you buy?
Well, I've got all the bits and pieces set up by a complete backup power system that would allow me to use 1 gallon of propane per day to run everything, because I would be charging up a bank of nickel-iron batteries.
Gotcha.
So it's just some little bits and pieces, a piece of cable and so forth. But the new version of Red Dawn came out, where the original movie, when it was being made. I'm not talking about the original version of Red Dawn, but the original version of the new version had Red Chinese as the bad guys, and the Chinese had enough influence to have it digitally changed to turn all the bad guys into North Koreans. North Korea is a proxy state for China.
Right.
We hear all about North Korean missiles and North Korean nuclear weapons. Well, those are Chinese missiles and Chinese nuclear weapons. Let's be frank about this. The North Korea is a dirt poor third world country. They don't have the scientists and the research and development necessary to build missiles and nuclear weapons. That just doesn't exist. If those facilities do exist in North Korea, they're being manned and funded by the Chinese. So both the Russians and Chinese both like to use proxies to carry out their dirty work. The Vietnam War was a Russian proxy war. The Korean War was a Chinese proxy war, except they did get boots on the ground there at one point, and MacArthur wanted to nuke them, and Truman was advised by his advisor that the Chinese had nukes. It turned out that advisor himself was a communist agent, and the communists did not have any nukes. Regardless, those are the things that keep me up at night. If anything does, is the threat of a foreign attack of some kind. Typically, I sleep pretty well at night, gentlemen, but when I get a private report about the ballistic missile defenses in the Mariana Islands being activated, yeah, that gets my attention.
John, if you can't put that in context, what does that mean to have them put on alert? In other words, are we talking about incoming here to the mainland? Is that what that is?
Well, that's what I got from it.
Okay.
And
right.
The North Koreans, we know enough about their capabilities to know that they have missile launch capabilities that could place missiles on ships at sea off the West Coast or the Gulf Coast or the East Coast, as far as that goes, and launch missiles that could get high enough up to set off nuclear weapons in the stratosphere and cause an EMP event, which is the same scenario, by the way, that they did in that most recent version of Red Dawn. Keep in mind that, I'll tell you a quick story. The powers that be like to telegraph their intentions. Recall the film with Richard Dreyfuss where he meets the aliens, Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And now, in that film, Richard Dreyfuss is given instructions by the aliens, including latitude and longitude, where the human beings are going to meet the aliens. And in the movie, they do give an actual latitude and longitude for this place of meeting. And it's supposed to be the Devil's Tower, which is a tourist attraction out west, a large flat-top rock. It turns out the actual location of that latitude and longitude was at that time the middle of a cornfield that 15 plus years in the future was going to be the exact center of the new Denver airport.
Wow.
Wow is right.
and I don't, and you don't believe in coincidences. Wow.
All the things at the Denver airport, the death god statues, the murals, the underground caverns, and
when I first heard Jesse Ventura was going to do these shows, I thought this will be a bunch of fluff. It turns out he's done a really good job, and I'm really proud of Jesse, another Vietnam vet, by the way, doing what he did. It's been a good series, and it's opened up a lot of eyes that otherwise never would have been opened.
Exactly. Well, John, how deep do you go into the Illuminati and the power structure behind the people that are supposedly in power? How deep do you go, and how much weight do you put into that in research time?
I put enough in it to satisfy myself of what's going on. I recommend there's a historian named Ralph Epperson. One of his books he wrote in the late 80s still has great value. The title of it is The Unseen Hand by Ralph Epperson, Epperson. He documents 200 years of Western history, and one of the things I like as a researcher is there's about 35 or so pages of footnotes at the back giving citations to original source material. Many authors say, here it is, believe it because I said so. Epperson says, here it is, and here's the original source material you can check out for yourself. It made me very angry because I found out things about my war, the Vietnam War, that I'd never had known before. And in fact, he's done work since then that gave the true story of how the Vietnam War actually ended, which is a fascinating story. And a lot of this stuff is available at no charge as free video downloads at his website, by the way. So I go into it deep enough to satisfy myself about the reality of it, about the truthfulness of it, and the fact that this as I mentioned earlier, gentlemen, it's a generational thing. These people have been working for generations in these family bloodlines to accomplish goals that are mutually accessible and desirable for these family bloodlines, which is pretty well documented, I would say, in the Georgia Guidestones, where their ultimate goal is to have 500 million people alive on the planet that they control, and everybody else being dead. And everything I'm seeing and reading leads me to believe that they fully intend to accomplish that goal.
John, if I may ask this, we know that they have their resources, their personnel, everything is in order, ready to go. What is stopping them from dropping that other foot?
Well, they've been delayed a number of times by a number of things. But what they're really fearful of, gentlemen, is American Christian middle class. There's never been a group of Christians on this planet with the financial power and the ability and the goodness of the American Christian middle class. They're fearful of us, and they should be, because we're on the right side, and they know they're on the wrong side. They're convinced that their weapons that they possess and the power they have will allow them to overcome Christians and take over the world. And they are truly fearful of our power, and they're fearful that we will really figure out what our power is, which most of us haven't. So to answer your question, Joe, I know there's been delays on one hand. On the other, I know that they're in a hurry to get done because the violent earth changes that are at the beginning of happening right now will shut down everybody, including them. So that when the earthquakes get bad enough, the volcanoes get bad enough, when these oceans start to come out of their banks, that's when they get shut down as well. So they want to get their shiny New World Order in place and under control before they get shut down also.
And folks, I really believe, John, I think you said the key here. This is something I've heard from sources from inside the government where they want to have the infrastructure set up. They know the certain cycles. They understand certain cycles. They understand the patterns, the history, and they understand the event markers, not necessarily time, but the event markers. So they want to have everything in place before, going into this crisis or multiple crises.
Exactly.
So they've got, right, okay. And folks, I think it's very important for everyone to understand. And John, I think that was very eloquently laid out there. I really think that's a key issue here. So
it is key. It is the most key issue, and they'll do by hook or by crook. They'll use subterfuge. They'll use false flag operations. They'll stage World War III. Whatever it takes, releasing a flu virus that kills 6 out of 10 people, or combinations. There's no reason why two or more of these scenarios could not take place at the same time. World War III, economic collapse, and a flu virus that's a biological weapon. Why not?
Exactly. Yeah.
If it furthers their goals, they'll do it. That's the bottom line. If it helps them achieve their goals, they will do it.
And I've been told many, many times to think big and think bigger than big. Think well beyond what we're. The lie is bigger than we can fathom, and that yes, this is indeed happening, and everything pretty much as you laid out is taking place. And people call us conspiracy theorists or kooks or whatever. Well, it turns out that this is not. By definition, it's a conspiracy, but it's not. It's true. It's.
Well, it is. Doug, people our parents' age, people who were adults in 1941, try to convince them that Franklin Roosevelt knew about the attack on Pearl Harbor before it happened. See how far that gets you.
Yeah. Funny you should mention that. I had a discussion this weekend with a gentleman who's going to be 80, very sharp, intelligent, absolutely intelligent, and we had that discussion. Well, it wasn't a discussion. Let's just put it that way. It was. I was shut down pretty quickly. So, yeah, I understand that. Yeah,
I know, and that's despite the evidence is clear and convincing from several different sources that the man did in fact know about the attack, the date and the time, well before it happened. But don't disturb my reality with your facts.
Exactly, and at times there's nothing new under the sun, as well. But I find to borrow a quote from one of my sources, this power structure, the people behind the ultimate power wielders, they're using, for example, they're perverting the King James version of the Bible to, they're following it to the letter to advance their enslavement of all of us, and this
Absolutely.
is indeed a prison planet, So
John, I know you got Steve Quayle coming on here in a few minutes.
Stan Dale is coming on.
Stan. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you had Steve coming on.
No.
Well, Steve's posting earlier this week about the foreign troops on his alert section has really got a lot of people going. I think I talked to Joe about it earlier this week, didn't I, Joe?
Yes.
Yeah, what do you make of that, John?
It's unusual in several aspects. First of all, it gives an unusual amount of details that can and should be verified. It's very alarming and very disturbing. And for people who don't know what we're talking about, Steve Quayle's website in the alert section, last time I looked a couple hours ago, it was still the second one down about foreign troops. It's a kind of posting that when you see it, at least when I see something like that, I feel compelled to attempt to follow up on it and do some independent verification one way or the other. Either verify that it's real or show that it's just a story.
I got to tell you, John, I have been working on several. I've been in contact with several people during the last 24 hours, attempting to get additional information. I've talked to Steve about this twice since he posted it, maybe 3 times. We are working on additional verification, but it's got me a little bit concerned. Let me just put it that way. My inability, or not having the ability to discount what he has posted is causing me some concern, and I'll just keep everyone advised, keep you advised. When we find additional information, we'll let you know. But
okay.
in the waning moments here, we've got a minute left before the top of the hour. John, tell us about your program. It's
Monday through Friday, 0600 Central Time for 1 hour. My shows are archived on YouTube, usually by mid-morning. We had some problems with a intentional virus with my archives that we just finally dealt with about 3 or 4 hours ago. So they're all archived on YouTube, and if you go to my homepage, thelibertyman.com, the top right-hand corner, there's a place to click on the YouTube archives. A lot of information there on my website, as we talked about earlier, free downloads, articles that people might find helpful and informative. And we talk about health-related matters. I have scientists on, like Professor McCanny. I have medical doctors on. I have another scientist on every Friday, Ann Morrison, talking about earthquakes, volcanoes, and related weather matters. So there's a lot of information. It just continues every week, building on itself.
Well, I'll tell you what, I download your shows. I love your shows. I love your delivery, and I would urge everyone to listen to your shows. John, I want to thank you.
TheLibertyMan.com. It's been a pleasure, Mr. Moore.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Yeah, we look forward to hoping we can do this again sometime.
I hope we can. That'll be great. Have a good evening, gentlemen.
God bless. Folks, that was John Moore, John J.R. Moore, the John Moore Radio Show. Also, thelibertyman.com, thelibertyman.com. Folks, bookmark that website. Put it in your favorites and visit it often. Certainly make sure you subscribe to his YouTube channel. You're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on the 31st day, the last day of July 2013. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. We'll be right back.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this Wednesday, the final day of July, the 31st, 2013. We are joined in our first hour by John Moore at thelibertyman.com. Go to his website. And this hour we are on with Stan Dale. A pleasure to have him on again. As we talked earlier, and we didn't mention this during the show yet, but we're going to have Stan on as a regular guest, hopefully once a week on, I think, Tuesdays, 9 to 10 is what we talked about doing. And really our first regular guest and such a great person to have on in that capacity when we see the changes that are happening in our world today with all the things from the solar events to the earth changes, the volcanic activity to the sky activity. We have Stan Dale with us now. The MillenniumArc.com is the website.
StanDale.com.
StanDale.com, yeah.
And before we bring Stan on, I just want to say, folks, we talk about preparation. In fact, we mentioned the sponsors, American Survival Wholesale, but the greatest gift of all, I really think that this is perhaps one of the most greatest secrets. It's not a secret, but it's something that a lot of people don't know. If you go to StanDale.com, if you look at the tab on the upper left-hand corner, it'll take you to a page that Holly Dale has written the book Dare to Prepare, but there's so much information on that. If you just click on that tab on the upper left, free preps, it'll take you to a page where there's information that'll keep you informed. What an asset to all of us who are looking to prepare. It's just fantastic. In fact, we've got it hard linked on our website right now. If you go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, Holly's that link is right there in the article for today's promo, and use it. Holly put a lot of time, a lot of effort, and there's a lot of good information on there. I just want to make sure I got that in before we brought Stan on. So, Joe, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
All right. With that, Mr. Stan Dale, can you hear me?
Hello, this is Moonbase 1. Are you there?
Yes, we are. Over and out.
Ranger Tom speaking.
Hi, guys. How are you this evening?
Fantastic. And we are glad to have you on. Stan, we talked earlier, and I'm looking right now at what your earthquake and volcanic forecasts are for today. I want to start off by asking you a question that was posed to me by a listener and a friend. We're seeing some storms, and this is something that really hasn't been picked up on anywhere I've seen, off the Pacific, some hurricane tropical storm type storms off the Pacific. And it is said that it's possible that a underwater volcano in California, off the coast of California, is heating the water there and giving the storms the ability to generate due to the heating of the water. Have you heard anything about this?
Well, not exactly, but I'm looking here at the at today's forecast map for the quakes, and I put red arrows when there's anomalous temperatures. Now, right off the California coast for maybe a week now, I've been seeing something developing there, which is not only possibly a volcano, but a seismic event on a new portion off the plate there. This is right, it would be kind of distance 200 miles off the shore there, just where the Baja starts, and about even with that. Now, that's one area, and there's another one up under the Juan de Fuca plate. And there we know we've got volcanoes that are sub-oceanic volcanoes, but as far as how active they are at the moment, we're not getting any hard data. But by golly, this one off the coast of California, Southern California down there, that's impressive. There's something going on there. And I've seen a number of places. There's one off the coast of Africa. Same thing. I've got it circled and arrowed. And the Philippines. I can see why Art Bell moved back to the States now, because Mindanao Island, the southern portion of the Philippines, is at risk for a big earthquake and or a volcanic eruption. And that's been sitting there for about 3 or 4 days, too. I've been watching that. Even though I haven't published the reports every day, I've missed a couple of them, but I've seen them in all of them. And there's another one off the coast of South Africa, or just up between South Africa and the big horn, the hump up there on the left. You can see that on my map. Those areas there are of concern. They've been showing heat patterns that are anomalous and some signs of tectonic plate activity. And off the coast of Africa, on the right-hand side of my map with the circle and an arrow pointing, there is an area where they've published, the USGS equivalent over in Spain has said a new tectonic border is appearing there. That plate's going to fracture. Now, they're not giving any estimate of the actual time, but I'm telling you right now, that sprung up overnight, the thermals I've been seeing there. And over the last 3 weeks, there have been very, very anomalous behavior and temperatures there. I think something's about to happen there, too.
Yeah, I'm looking at this right now.
Meaning what though? What do you see happening there?
Well, if that keeps on behaving like it is off the northwest coast of Africa, just south of the Canaries, that could produce some plate movement that would trigger the Canary Islands, for seismic activity. And at that point, then the Cumbre de Viejo mudslide release could occur. And that could produce a tsunami toward Florida and the eastern coast. Now, that's why I've been watching it, because there have been so many schools of thought in the professional circles about whether the mudslide off that island just north of El Hierro by about 50 miles, if that mudslide, if it all fell into the ocean, however many tons of that there is, would it actually produce the strength of tsunami that we're saying? And the majority of the arguments are in favor of yes, it would. And with that plate instability there off the northwest coast of Africa and the thermals we've been seeing, some very unusual patterns, straight line patterns almost over 1,000 miles wide. I think that we need to keep an eye on that area. And certainly if I lived in Florida and the area there, I would be reading this website and the news current as current as you could daily, while this is acting up. Now, it'll take it several hours to, maybe half a day even to reach the coastline of the United States, depending on how fast it goes. But it'll probably go around 500-600 miles an hour when it takes off, heading off from the Cumbre de Vieja mountain or island there. And it is an old volcano with a lot of frozen magma in the pipes there, a lot of stored water that could lubricate that. So it's a very probable problem. And above that, too, on that same map, up toward the line that would join the Mid-Atlantic Trench or Mid-Atlantic Ridge to the gates of Gibraltar, the Pillars of Gibraltar there, there's a line along there which people haven't been paying too much attention to, but there's a group of small volcanoes and seismic zones where that tectonic plate from the Gibraltar area joins to the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. And we've been keeping an eye on that, and a couple of our readers have been keeping an eye on it for us to be sure I don't miss it, because sometimes I do miss some of the news. But that area, too, could be triggered by this, which Lord only knows what that would release. But we've got so much tension building up on the planet and the tectonic plates at the moment, some being pressure to push things together and other to tear them apart, that once we get a major quake, like a 9+ bell ringer somewhere, we're probably going to see over the next 2 or 3 days after that a house of dominoes where other earthquakes and volcanoes start to ignite or to become earthquakes.
Wow. Okay, and that's frightening. But by the way, folks, you can go to standeyo.com. That's standeyo, DEYO.com. Again, it's linked off of HomelandSecurityUS.com. And click on the map there, the seismic/volcanic potentials, and this is the map which we're talking about tonight. How far inland would the worst case scenario, Stan? How far inland would this? Are we talking the potential for devastation? Should that break loose?
People need to. You're looking probably a wave height that might be around 100 feet tall, and traveling just below the speed of sound. If you've ever been in a motorboat out in the lake, and when it's doing about 30 knots, 20 knots even, you put your hand off the side of the boat into the water, you know how it hurts your hand to hit the water that fast? And it hurts.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now, imagine 600 mile an hour, 10 stories tall, coming at a coastline. There won't be anything left. It will clean it like a razor blade has gone over the landform. Now, the only thing I can tell people is this, to help them, kind of figure out, how far inland that would go, is to go on our website there, go down to where you see a picture of a microphone on the left of the page, and off to the right of that there'll be some blue lettering, or I think it's big blue lettering. It says Show Images, and that's where I have images that I talk about from time to time. And if you go to that main page, you go down on that Show Images page to the fourth row down the middle of it. You see a big picture of the United States, and I've got that at a very high resolution, so that you can download it. And where you see the dark blue areas along the coastlines there, those areas are 200 feet below sea level at that point. So something, 100 feet tall would probably be halfway between what I've shown there and the coastline. And that'll give you an idea, if you live in any of those areas, how far inland you've got to go to avoid what's coming. And you'll only have about 10 hours if you're packed and ready to go immediately to get, maybe 300 or 400 miles inland. But if you look at that map there in that picture of the United States, the extremely dark blue areas are from 0 to 200 feet. That'd be 200 feet below sea level. So about halfway between there and the actual dark blue area for the sea would be where people would have to look at getting away from. I made this map for some other purpose, for the water intrusion, like for the polar caps melting, all the ice melting, that kind of stuff, and maybe catastrophic meteor impact. And that's why this map is like that. You'll see two maps there. One will show the state lines, which will help people surely to see more of where they want to go. But this will be a good guide. And in fact, one of these days I may go ahead and make one of the 100-footers to show people. Now, by the way, 100-foot high tsunami, or tidal wave rather, or a tsunami more properly, coming from the east toward our east coastline, if that were to hit, it would probably surge higher than 100-foot altitude. You can envision in your mind where this 100-foot wall is coming at the coast. It hits it and slams into it and splashes up. It may go in as far as the 200-foot level that I've got here. So that's another factor to consider.
Wow. Yeah, and not exactly rosy, not a rosy picture indeed.
No, not at all.
Wow.
And we talked earlier, Stan, two things I wanted to hit on. One is if people were just watching Fox News and that's all they paid attention to. Last night there was a segment that aired about the 1/3 of the sun, breaking off, the energy breaking off and heading towards Earth, and they were making a big deal about this. And I see you have an article up about a massive solar flare that might have narrowly missed Earth, EMP disaster avoided. But this big coronal hole that we see, is this a lot of hype, or is there more? Is this more hype than danger, or more danger than we would?
Look, in my opinion, it is more hype, heaps more hype than danger, because we saw this on, Holly and I, we were looking over stuff probably a week to 10 days before Fox picked it up. By the time you go back to look at the actual current situation on the sun, that coronal hole has already moved around the other side of the sun and it hasn't sent a big chunk our way, as some people have been trying to say. That's just stupid. But anyway, there'd be that many private astronomers, that many scientists and individuals associated privately that would want to tell their friends and neighbors and family wherever they are on the planet, it's going to hit the fan. This will be all over the internet no matter what.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you right now, I've seen coronal holes on the sun, not as big as this, perhaps half that size. And it does concern me for another reason, but we can talk about that in a minute. But as far as answering your question, get up tomorrow morning, have your cereal, go to work, do the same thing. This is not something to worry about yet. It's not throwing off chunks at us.
Okay. And the second story I see on your site that was something I wanted to touch on today, regardless, was 1,122 record U.S. cold temperatures broken this week in the U.S.
Right.
What are we seeing with the cold temperatures? Is this due to the jet stream slowdown? Is this something else we're seeing? Are we looking at an ice age, a mini ice age?
Look, some scientists have certainly been saying that, but what we're looking at here is a short-term variable, which is not climate change, it's weather change. And the whole so-called climate, the long-term period behavior of the planet, is up in the air at the moment because of a number of issues that are coming to a head, which are periodic changes that occur in the Earth as it ages. But as far as these temperatures right now, you can tell that the jet stream has flipped down over that area, and we can talk about what made the jet stream flip down. But those record temperatures are because the jet stream is swinging down lower than it should for this time of year. And I mean, anybody that has like a garden or orchard or something, is in the growing business, they're going to tell you that this year and last year that the growing climate has been very unpredictable and very unfriendly to most places that produce crops, whether it was freezes into the early part of spring, or whether it was drought, which went all year long. I mean, where Holly and I are, we're in the high desert here, and if we get 6 inches of rain a year, we're tickled to death, right? And we've gotten about that much this year, but it's been too little too late, and it just evaporates and sucks up into the dirt and is gone. We have one apple, not one apple tree, one apple in 15 trees on our, out in our orchard. All the rest of the blooms were killed by, atypical freezes or frost that occurred within a week of each other and just wiped out every blossom we had. And we've got plenty of bees. They're sitting here eating our, pollinating our flowers on the vegetables. But we can tell you from firsthand knowledge, not hearsay, that the climate is not doing, the weather is not what it should be. The climate is in change and it's in chaos. And I don't think it's going to be heading for an ice age, not while the sun is heating up, not while we're intensifying heat on the planet, not from, too many cows passing gas or that kind of nonsense, but from periodic changes that occur in our star, in the sun. It's not only the Earth that's heating up, all the other inner planets, even the outer gaseous planets, they are heating up too. You can tell it at their polar regions. So it's not just an Earth problem. It's a solar system problem. And we are watching the sun very closely for some other behavior that we expect it to do, which, again, we can discuss in a few minutes. But this unseasonal, cold thing is, I'm pretty sure, due to the whipping around of the jet stream. The jet streams become unstable when the magnetic field of the Earth becomes unstable. And I've been seeing evidence of that now for the last 3 months increasingly, where the North Pole is shifting its position twice as fast as the South Pole, like a top that's trying to flip over. We can see that the jet stream, on other planets as well, is tied into two things: the spin forces of the planet, whether it be gaseous or solid, and the magnetic field of the planet, if it has one that's dynamic at this point. So, watching the sun's north and south pole, which are in the process of flipping right now. They do that every 11 years, but they're doing a flip while ours on Earth is weakened to the point that this instability in the solar wind and the solar magnetic field is perturbing our magnetic field. I mean, we can see that in a number of reports and images that are coming off the satellites. So the jet stream tied to that, tied to the magnetic field, the electric charge, the magnetic field of the sun. All of these things are very complex factors. In fact, there are over 100 different variables in the equations that even at NASA, where they're trying to do weather forecasting, that you have to consider to even see a week ahead of time. And that is instability that we're looking at there. And what's coming next, I don't know.
All right. Yeah, great explanation there. And what is on your radar of things happening with the sun or with the Earth as far as volcanic activity, earthquakes? I know we talked about your daily forecast map and the hot spots to look for. If you were to have to take a guess as to what we would see next, we're seeing more sinkholes still coming up everywhere.
If I can just kind of chime in here, Stan, about the sinkholes in the southeastern United States. I got some information here recently, and maybe you can decipher this for me.
All right.
Okay. And I'm not a scientist by any stretch, so forgive me if I'm explaining this incorrectly, but I'm trying to relay what was explained to me. The Northeast is saturated from the rains, and believe me, I live in the Northeast. We live in the Northeast here near the Great Lakes, and the ground is just, we can't take any more water from the rains, and we're forecast for more rains. Well, it was explained to me that if you would invert like a saucer with one edge close to the Great Lakes, or even up further, and with the other edge down around the sinkhole areas, the Gulf of Mexico area, or do I want to say saucer? Whatever, like a contact lens with the outer portion facing up. The pressure from the water onto the Earth's crust is actually causing pressure, if you will, down on the south. Does that make sense to you? Or maybe I've slaughtered that entire explanation. But
no,
is there a relationship there?
I see what you're saying. And certainly there are a number of factors to be considered there. When the extra weight of water is deposited anywhere from the North Pole down to the equator, it is subject to two forces, at least two. One is the centrifugal force, which produces the Coriolis rotation in clouds and water that's in the ocean in various places, and the water goes down your toilet. The Coriolis forces spin that too. The weight increases, or we'll just call it weight. That's a simple way to say it. When you get closer to the equator, the spin is throwing you out with more force. When you get an area saturated like that on land so that it doesn't allow the water to flow freely off into the ocean in normal drainage patterns, it will concentrate more weight there. In fact, in North Island, New Zealand, it's one site that I can relate this to. The GNS group there, which is their USGS, keep a close watch on the amount of water that's in Lake Taupo, because the weight of it is holding the cap on a humongous volcano that's going to be producing more damage probably than if Yellowstone went. And so they consider the weight of the lake very closely. Now, if you take that over land where we are here and put that kind of water levels down into the dirt, sure, it's going to make weight changes on the tectonic plate between the New Madrid and the East Coast. That's one byproduct that we might see from that. But with the sinkholes, the majority of them that I've read about were caused by water of some sort leaking and flowing underneath the sinkhole for a period of time, and then, of course, it weakened the structure. It fell in, and it was a perfect round hole in most cases, and everybody gets excited. We haven't seen these before. Now, long before the rain saturated the eastern United States, we were getting this increase in sinkholes. And as I've been trying to explain to people for some time now, the Earth itself is expanding. Now, it doesn't have to go kabang and expand to, a third more of its diameter, but it is starting an expansion which is stretching the surface of the Earth. Now, if people have been living over what became a sinkhole, and then all of a sudden it weakened because of water intrusion. My thought is this, that the reduction of sidewise pressure on the dirt by stretching it, making it thinner, releasing those compression forces that hold the dirt together on the surface of the earth. Then when you have water leakage that has been there for a while, or you have a pipe that now bursts because it's been stretched apart and a joint's broken, then you're going to see sinkholes in odd places and in greater numbers, which is exactly what we're seeing now. That ties it to water flows, and I think we will see the water migrate down toward the equator along the east coast through the soil and through the lakes and rivers. But I do think that people in Florida, for instance, where the land is not that far, like 200, 300 feet maybe above sea level there, and a lot of places are right down very close. Those areas are very unstable, very flimsy, very soaked with water. And if you add more stuff to it and a little bit of a shake, I think, expansion of the planet, I think Florida, all along Florida, could be in trouble. And not only them, go over to the other side of the country. Go over to California, to the Salton Sea area just above where the Gulf of California hits, the Baja area. In that area there, the tectonic plate, even though it's dry, is very thin and flimsy, so much so that if you get a Richter 5 or 6 in the Salton Sea area, which is inland, there are aftershocks there for days. I mean, lots of them, and that tells you it's vibrating. There's a big boom, and then there's blah, 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 like that for days. That is not good, and I've seen that in a couple of other places on the planet in the last month, which is telling me that there are some thin areas that are very flimsy, and they want to stretch and break. As I say, I'm trying to do my best on the website here to tell you when I see something that's dangerous, in my opinion. And certainly I'm not using a crystal ball or anything to be accurate as far as, like Kresge, the great, forecast the future. But I'm doing the best scientifically with the data I've got and the algorithm I've formed to try to find these problem areas to tell you when I think something is serious. And it's getting to the point now where the thermal variation, the change in temperatures of the sea surface, especially in the northern hemisphere, right from Iceland, right on across and down into the upper United States, all across there, the temperatures are anomalous. They're either too cold or too hot, and they're rapidly changing. I can see that. I measure the speed at which they change too, which means they're fluctuating up, down, like that. And I can tie that back to variations, I think, in the output of the sun, the irradiance of the sun and the solar wind density. I'm still working on the accuracy of that, but
wow.
We're in for some interesting changes over the next, from now and during the period between now and the end of 2015.
Okay. With these solar waves and coronal mass ejections, are we seeing any kind of new particles or particles that are damaging our atmosphere or changing the way that our atmosphere runs?
Well, yes and no. Certain particles or certain mass coming from the solar wind is penetrating further into our atmosphere than it has before. So in that respect, we are getting new types of material further down in the atmosphere. Our magnetic field builds a shield in the ionosphere around the Earth. And that shield is like the shields in Star Trek when the captain says, shields, and they go up to ward off attacks by the enemy and photon torpedoes and that kind of stuff. In our case, it's gamma radiation, it's high-speed protons and electrons, other ejected mass from the sun. In case it might be iron, it might be other metallic elements in small, atomic states. But these things get thrown off when you have a coronal mass ejection and a flare following it. Now, as to the percentage of these materials now reaching Earth through the solar wind and actually penetrating our weakening shield, I don't know. I don't have that access, to the data, and I'm sure they're probably holding it close to the chest at the moment. The weakening magnetic field of the Earth is the thing we've got to watch for that. I mean, it ties into so many other weather, climate, animal behavior, crop, food availability things. It's just not even funny. It's the magnetic field, and that is unstable and wobbling. That allows, even deep space cosmic radiation to come into the Earth, particularly gamma radiation from bursts, stars that go supernova and somewhere in our galaxy. The sun itself is in a grand solar sunspot maximum, and we've never had a solar sunspot peak called a grand solar maximum. NASA coined that this year, and I'm still not, whatever excuse they give, I'm still not sure why they really did that, because the number of sunspots we're getting this year is down. It's way down. It's nothing unusual. So why would you call it grand, meaning big sunspot count this year? No. There's something else going on. Now, in 92, I know the government knew about this, and for a long time they didn't want to release it, even though they had key members of the Air Force, U.S. Air Force, and other things overseas monitoring what happened in 92 to the sun. And in that year, it started emitting 2 new ultraviolet frequencies, a bandwidth in there of 2 new center frequencies. It had never done that before, as far as we could record. Now, when it did, the increased emission, or the new emission of these ultraviolet rays, fooled scientists, because it made them scratch their head, because they had set up an equation for how the nuclear reactions of the sun work to produce all the stuff it throws off. And seeing these 2 new bandwidths coming out of it, it's a fingerprint that tells you, whoops, something's wrong with the sun's formula. It's not working like we thought it should. Now, either we're made a big mistake in how we figured it worked, or it's something that we need to put into our equations for the future, because they always look at the past to get the future with their equations on those things. And look, I'm of the opinion that I agree with those that say it's changing. The sun's chemistry is changing. It is aging. About 25, 30 years ago, the Russians, scientific crew, said that the sun has burned up over half of its hydrogen. So you say, well, okay, it's got half to go. But they're not certain now then, when it's reached that tipping point, when it will no longer have enough energy from the hydrogen reactions, which primarily fission, to suddenly stop, change the formula itself, and start making a helium-helium reaction, which produces a warmer sun in various wavelengths. And then we have a brighter blue ultraviolet sun, or brighter toward the white spectrum, or they can go the other way and go toward red, more infrared. And using biblical prophecy, I think what's going to happen is the shift in the light output of the sun will go more toward the high ultraviolet, which is still going to not be comfortable to walk around in, but it won't burn the surface of the Earth as badly as an infrared shift would.
Wow. Interesting, and that's a lot to digest as we see the changes everywhere on our Earth and being manifest in space and on other planets also. I saw an interesting photo of, what was it, a hexagram on the North Pole of Saturn, I think, that was released. Yep. Is there any way that can occur naturally? Is that,
yes, most certainly.
Okay.
If you have at a given latitude of any planet, especially a gas giant like that, if you have storms or like Coriolis forces spinning, if you can have 6 points of that form, and they'll form equidistantly, because in between those spinning cyclones, they don't touch each other, because in between the cyclones, even though they're spinning in the same direction, the sides of them that face each other at that latitude are actually opposing each other, and it keeps them at an equal spacing. Now, theoretically, you might even have 5 point instead of 6. But in the case of this, I'm sure that it's a natural reaction. I did the equations. I formed the sphere and did the spins, and I saw that it's a natural process, so I wouldn't be concerned that someone's fiddling that. You know what I'm saying? It's neat, but it's a function that you'll see mainly on gas giants when they're spinning.
Interesting how that. Yeah, I didn't even know about that until Joe pointed that out. Stan, you mentioned, if we can go back just a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes here, you mentioned about biblical prophecy and about the sun and the output and the changes there. Go over that just one more time for me, because of course, biblical prophecy talks about changes, signs in the sun, signs in the sky. Exactly what did you mean? What should we be looking for, or what are we looking at? What did you reference there?
Well, the Solar Observatory down in Arizona, I'm forgetting the professor's name, but I did talk with him in addition to some Air Force personnel down at in Australia on the West Coast there at the observatory at the IPS Center. Both of them verified and wrote papers on the new output coming from the sun in 92. Now, I was able to get that before they really kind of clamped down on giving you any more information about it. But basically what happened then was these two new spectral frequencies came out, and I asked one of the physicists on it, the solar physicist, I said, look, this new couple of bandwidths of ultraviolet coming out of the sun now, is it going to produce like more cancer in people? And he said, not necessarily. From what our research shows, the damage this will do is rather subtle. These two new frequencies will hit the Earth, they'll penetrate the atmosphere, they'll go down into the ocean. Now, instead of being reflected back so that they don't add energy to our Earth system, they're being absorbed almost as a nutrient by phytoplankton and microbes that are at the very bottom of the food chain that eventually feed the krill, that feed the whale and the fish and all that kind of stuff. And so they are absorbing that ultraviolet package coming in from the sun now, and our oceans are becoming warmer because of them living, and their living process produces heat. So that tells us there's danger from that already, just indirectly, in that it will increase the heat of the planet internally. It's like a greenhouse effect. Now, I am one of those people that says the chemtrails are not primarily designed to kill you. The byproduct of them, the metallic particles and stuff that are hitting the crops and being ingested, that is a byproduct of what Dr. Teller's people did to try to balance the thermal energy coming into the sun by reflecting a lot of it out over various areas at various times of the year. It was, I'm sure, decided at a high level that some people would die, because of the metallic powders and stuff that eventually reach our food chain, and maybe other things that would affect people directly, allergy-wise. But they said it's an allowable loss of people. The percentage is, the collateral damage is acceptable. Sure, we'll lose a few people, they say, but we'll save the planet. And I would hate to have to be in their position to make that decision. And I certainly wouldn't make it known, obviously, through the press, because of the uproar that it would cause and the panic, and you'd never have a chance to save the planet if that's what they're trying to do. And personally, I think Dr. Teller's motives in that area were very altruistic, we're safe, and we're not meaning to hurt a lot of people. But it was a tactical, maybe a strategic, you could call it a strategic decision they made to save the planet from that particular threat. And there are a lot of others that are even more threatening, but, asteroid, meteors, comets. There's one that if we get some star somewhere in our galaxy here in the Milky Way that goes supernova and release, 1 million suns energy all at once, normal output energy all at once in the gamma ray frequency range, that will hit Earth, and that would sterilize the planet, and we'd be dead. I don't think that's going to happen, but I'm just saying that there are a number of other astrophysical phenomena that could be worse than what we're talking about with just chemtrailing to stop the planet from heating. And when you heat the planet, and you heat it unevenly, because the heat does migrate in tune with the electric currents in the surface of the Earth, the telluric currents they call them. When heat migrates, and you've got to get rid of a lot of new heat coming into the system from the oceans and whatever, from life forms, from radiation penetrating our shields, when you have to get rid of that energy, it produces huge disparities in drought and in wet and in calm and in hurricane and in storms. These huge storms develop, and it's such an integrated system, the Earth. Lord only knows what else happens as a result, but it produces these extremes. And I've been warning people about this since 1996. Look out. When this starts to happen, when the sun starts to pour more energy in than we can get rid of, it's going to create this disparity, these extremes in cold and hot weather. and that is going to drive the engine of the planet that makes climate, and it's going to go crazy. And we're seeing that now. I mean, Holly's picture of the day today, the photo of the day on our website, if you look at that, that's 4 tornadoes over the ocean, but that's 4 of them all at once over the Greek island of Orthani in the Ionian Sea. Oh, Holly's telling me the story they had. Oh, yeah, that's here. I see it now. There were at least 10 of these going, but they only were able to photograph 4 all at once. I mean, if you look at that photo, I mean, that's a once-in-a-lifetime shot, and we only saw 4 of the 10 that was around them there. I'm telling you, this is the extremes we're talking about, right there in living color.
Wow. And folks, Stan's website is standeo.com. That's DEYO, standeo.com. Again, the hard link from HomelandSecurityUS.com. Absolutely incredible photo. And you're right, Stan. I remember listening to you on Art Bell, talking about these very issues, and here we're seeing not quite 20 years later, everything you were talking about coming to pass. Okay, now I do have a question though. I heard the word neutrinos. The term neutrinos. Does that have anything to do with the 1992 the sun frequencies, or is that something totally different?
Well, we do have facilities that have been funded primarily privately across the United States to measure the neutrino count coming out of the sun, because a high density neutrino count is like a neutron bomb. You know, it can sterilize the planet and leave the buildings. And the 2 new frequencies coming out of the sun may have been a byproduct of something that increased the neutrino count, but I didn't see any public reports of the neutrino count going up to match it at the time. I don't know who's doing that now, and it is a good question. It's probably something that in my spare time I should look up and try to...
Spare time. Yeah.
Well, as you know, I've got several things on my plate trying to get stuff ready to release to people. The gravity paper, which has illustrations in it, and I've tried to figure out ways to make it an e-book, but it's just impossible because they won't let us put color into Kindle and book. It's all black and white, and you can't put animations in. It's got to be stills, and that just doesn't tell the picture. So I'm going to have to put it on a flash drive or a PDF file that allows animations in color and put it out on the web that way. But it will help people understand a lot more than just listening to me wave my hands and talk here on the radio and say this is how it really works. And it'll help them to visualize and see the effects it's going to have on our solar system and the Earth. In fact, it is happening now.
Interesting.
We had John Moore on right before you, and he talked about a threat he saw, which was a biological threat, the H7N9 flu. I'm not sure how much you follow the biological happenings.
Holly does that a lot. She's the one that handles the news, and I hear her talking about it quite a bit. So what's your question?
I just wanted to know, he said that there was some cases reported in Mexico, and he didn't want to get specific about America because I don't think he had confirmed reports, but he said that the rate of death is 6 out of 10, and he said we're compared that to the Spanish flu, I think, which was 2% or 2 out of 10.
Oh, yeah, 2%.
Well, not only that, in the time of the Spanish flu, they didn't have as much air traffic, let's face it, between countries and exchange of people overnight from one country to another before symptoms can manifest. So something gets loose, whether it be that flu or whether it be some other, man-made one or whatever, it's going to go through us like, hot knife through butter all through the world. It's not only that we should worry about as far as biological. Even the Bible tells you about that. Nostradamus tells you about that as well, that we're going to have plagues, diseases that are going to strike us in the last days. And from my studies of sunspots and coronal mass ejections and solar wind and that kind of stuff, when we had increased sunspots and increased bombardment of the Earth in these various areas, it also affected people's behavior and their ability to ward off disease. Their immune system was compromised. High divorce rates, high crime rates, high death rates due to just all kinds of other normal diseases occur in peaks when we have these high sunspot periods. Now, we're low at the moment, but I think the energy is coming from the coronal mass hole, and we're going to see that come back around here in about 15 days. It'll start appearing again on our side of the sun. So understand that the one thing that may have been preventing some of these bad diseases from spreading, rapidly, is that we didn't have, solar wind, coronal mass ejections, and CMEs that hit the Earth and lowered our immunity. If this happens over the next year or two, you can see how it would make it a clean pathway for some pathogen to just come in and wipe us. The Bible says there's going to be a lot of people killed that way, a lot.
Yeah. And I have a question from a listener here and a friend. They're out in Nebraska, and they're talking about having locusts out there during the day, and they say that this is never happened, that they've never seen them come out during the day, and that it's too early for them for this time of the year. Have you heard anything about the different insect invasions, or I've even heard about crows, I think. These birds circulating in the same area, and that might be around the New Madrid fault. But have you heard anything about these?
Yeah, I mean, just a few weeks ago, when in Israel they were talking about an invasion of locusts that was unseasonal there, particularly at the time when the U.S. was over there trying to get Netanyahu to do something that Obama wanted and he didn't want to do. But they're like here in Colorado, where we've been watching the seasons because that's part of what we write about and talk about here on the shows. And I've seen most years, this summertime earlier in the summer, we would have had an invasion of these miller moths, so much so that you have to seal up everything in your house, door jambs, everything, because these things come at night in the thousands, and they will nest in your home. They will get in there. They're pretty dirty critters. They're not just flying around. They leave cracks in your carpets and in your curtains and things like that. And we haven't seen but one or two, not 1 or 2,000, but 1 or 2 of these moths this year, totally gone. And, we didn't have any locusts, but last year we had the Chinese beetle that hit all of our squash and watermelon and just decimated. We couldn't get rid of it. It just killed it just quickly. We haven't even seen tomato moths, and we've got tomato jungles out here. I mean, we watched them very closely this year. Nothing, no tomato worms, gone. What happened to every year we used to get them? So I'm seeing there's a migration of the insects and the birds and stuff, the other animals that feed on them. We've got more lizards than we ever had before. We got a few like kangaroo mice out in the paddocks there, but not a lot. They're all moving to other places, and I don't know where and why.
Would nuclear power have anything to do with that? Maybe a leakage of nuclear power or radiation levels? We know animals have a sense to know when danger is coming. As you said, they act weird when different things happen, whether it's from the sun or magnetics of the earth.
Well, I suppose certainly they could if they lived close to a radioactive source that was quite intense. As far as like Fukushima affecting our animals over here, like where we are, I don't think that the radiation count has been high enough to make them move. I think it's something else, perhaps the magnetic field, something all penetrating all over the planet. And I technically speaking, the Israelis don't have nuclear energy or bombs or any of that kind of stuff, but they do. And I don't know that would have caused the locust fly over there. The fact that we're seeing animals disappearing from their normal hunting grounds and not migrating to the right place and beaching of whales and various, like dolphins and things like that, this makes me think that it's a global phenomenon, not particularly linked at this point in time anyway, to nuclear reactor leakage. Certainly around close around sites like that where you have a meltdown, that would be a problem, and downwind from that if it's airborne. But I don't think that's what we're seeing. Not yet.
All right. And that answers that question pretty succinctly. I mean, pretty well. Stan, in the 5-6 minutes we have left here, tell us what's on your radar specifically. I mean, I know that you're looking at so many different things, and of course your maps are I mean, you're the father of the temperature maps and the sea temperature maps, and it's just wonderful, folks. I would urge everyone to visit standeo.com and check his maps out every day. But Stan, what's got your attention here of late? Whether it's, I don't know, whether it's the socioeconomic activity or earth changes, or regardless of what it is, what's got your attention here, or is it a combination of things?
Well, it's probably a combination of things. I get up in the morning about 7:38. I sleep in these days because my back is killing me and all these things. But so Holly lets me sleep in. She gets up about 4:30 and gets started on the news. So I check with her in the morning to see whether I want to get out of bed or not. It's Holly. That's true.
Sorry.
That's true. You ask her, I'll say, well, what's the world like today? It's good today, or don't bother. So that means have an extra cup of coffee before you go downstairs, but to the office. But of late, things like the economy, that's on a lot of people's lips that we talk to. They're without work, and they're not finding any work, and I don't think they're going to find much work for a while here, because we're not manufacturing enough here in this country. And our current administration is doing everything it can to kill productivity in this country. Everything it can. That's really probably foremost on our minds and everyone else. I mean, we notice that in our book sales and things that keep us going here, way down. If I tell you better than 80%, I'm not exaggerating. And we're seeing that all across the industry and the book sales, and in people that are have sites where their whole ministry is dependent on sales of their DVDs and stuff, all down. I was just at that conference up in the Springs this weekend, talking with a lot of other Christian witnesses that go out and on the radio and stuff like you guys do, and have websites like we do, and it's the same story all across the board. So that's probably right down to the pocketbook, which affects whether you're going to get up and have food tomorrow and a house to live in. That's the high interest topic for me at the moment. Second to that is what's happening in the Middle East, because that will affect also priority one, which is the economics. In the Middle East, we are now within 2 weeks of Netanyahu have to make a decision on whether to make a preemptive strike on Iran or on Damascus. They've already hit Damascus outside the city to some of the biological warfare dumps that were out there, stuff that they got from Saddam, and I think they might have gotten nuclear weapons from Saddam as well. Now, whether those nuclear weapons or weapon, I don't know, whether just one, are viable or whether they're well made is another issue. And I'm expecting the city of Damascus to be nuked from ground level and wiped out, just like the Bible says. Overnight, it will just be melted down, and no one will ever live there again. Now, that could be due to the terrorists getting a hold of Saddam's bomb or whatever he was working on that he put over into Syria, and triggering it by accident and killing themselves. It really won't matter whether they do it or whether the Israelis send a secret team in and do it. It really will not matter, because Israel will be blamed for it in the eyes of the world. And that will start a conflict that will certainly begin the tribulation period, if it hasn't already started by then. That I see happening between now and the end of the year. And the U.S. dollar, as a result, and in concert with that, dropping like a rock in value. So that means that you're going to be paying 3 or 4 times what you're paying for gas at the pump, food coming in that we're importing, all that kind of stuff, more cost. Anyway, I could go on, but I see our time is running out. So,
well, Stan, look, I agree 100% with you. The Middle East situation, the economy, and I've got to tell you, everyone I've spoken with, to Stan, sales down. One vendor that we deal with in particular, sales down 60% this year. You mentioned 80%.
Yep.
It's all over, and even our the people we deal with on a daily basis, it's just it's incredible.
House ownership, 18-year low, 4 out of 5 Americans living paycheck to paycheck. It's getting bad, yeah.
But one thing, Joe, I can tell you this, and ladies and gentlemen, please do yourself a favor. If you go to standeo.com, that's standeo.com, look at the upper left-hand tab there. After the news, it definitely, and Stan Hawley does a great job of selecting the most important news stories, and I just want to thank you for that, because I know she puts in a lot of time. But she also has done one thing that to me is just wonderful for everybody. If you go to the homepage, your homepage, and click on free prep info, there's so much information there. On the left-hand column, you can download so much information that is free of charge. She put a lot of work into that, and I want to thank you and her for that. But thank you for being part of our program and for imparting your knowledge and information to our
just Doug, just one thing. Holly was just telling me here. I wanted to say one thing about the economy. 4 out of 5 Americans are near poverty at the moment, according to the latest report she got a hold of. 80% of the country is near poverty. That could explain a lot, couldn't it?
Yes, it could, and it's sad, isn't it? I mean, last question, Stan. Is that by accident or by design?
Oh, I'm sure it's by design. I can think of several things that started in the Bush administration, or Clinton administration, actually, and it's continued with a vengeance in Obama's administration, which has just destroyed our economy. I mean, if you give away patents and make it open book to the Chinese who don't honor patent conventions, you destroy incentive to make new products. If you then tax your and bury your corporate structures here with paperwork and overtax them, they're not going to be in business, and they can't afford to pay, the wages that people want when the U.S. dollar starts to drop. I mean, it's intentional to bring America, the highest living standard per capita on the planet, down to a medium level between them and the guys that are sitting on the street in Piccadilly Circus somewhere, begging for money. I mean,
wow.
They're going to try to get a global planetary economy where basically all of us that have been living well will now have to give up a lot and come down to the living standard of those like in India and Pakistan and stuff, the poor, who, through their own problems have caused that, but still they're going to make everyone in the world come down to this happy medium income and think that's going to solve the problems. Sadly, it's not. It's going to create a lot of serfs and a few percent of the planet as, the overlords, the barons of this new serfdom.
Absolutely. Well, Stan, I want to thank you very much for your time tonight. We want to thank you for your time tonight. And God bless you, and you got to take care of your back, my friend.
Well, you know the same problem, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, we can compare or share back braces and whatever, but we're going to have to stop out and see you and Holly. My goodness, you've great friends of the program, and certainly great, just fantastic people. I want to thank you so much for your time tonight.
Well, thank you, and God bless you and Joe and your show, and we look forward to seeing you guys someday.
All right, man. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure, Stan. Thank you, and have a great day, and God bless you and your family.
Thank you, Joe. And same for you guys, as I said. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, that was Stan Deyo, and hour number 2 of this last day of July 31st, 2013. This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. We are going to our final break, and we'll be back with 1 hour of your calls and some news we're going to get.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 3. Hour number 3 of this final day of July 2013 broadcast for the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. I want to thank BTR. For their picking our show as a staff pick, and God bless the listeners and at the BTR offices. I want to say thank you for that. And also want to thank each and every one of you for listening, for joining us all the way from the Republic of Panama to the Central Queensland, Australia, Cliff there, and of course Glendon and the Republic of Panama, and everyone in between. God bless you, Joe in Essex, UK. Thank you very much for listening. Joe, what do we got here? What do we got for news? Look, we've got some. Well, what don't we have? But what's we had done some research before the show, knowing that our show would be a little bit abbreviated by our guests John Moore and Stan Dale, but the news is just pouring in. It seems like we're always seeing stuff. What's important here? What do we, in your estimation?
Yeah, we have a few items here that we should hit on, and 661-244-9839 is the number. We'll have open phone lines the last 50 minutes we have on the air, 661-244-9839. First piece of news I saw that was very interesting, caught my eye. Saudi Arabia accused of giving Egypt $1 billion to oust Morsi. A Saudi Arabian activist said his government provided Egypt's military with $1 billion to stage a coup against the former president, Mohamed Morsi, to install an interim leadership. Political activist Mr. Hammam, who operates an active Twitter campaign aimed at exposing corruption in the Saudi government, said General El-Sisi received the money on July 3rd. United Press International reported the reason for the payoff, he was alleged, was so Egypt's transfer of power would flow smoothly. But now the Saudi government isn't sure it spent its money wisely, he said. King Abdullah knows well that the future of the coup in Egypt will be a disaster for al-Saud because the new government will be stronger, will adopt anti-Saudi policies. Mr. Hammam tweeted, according to the UPI, that's only why King Abdullah is one of the supporters of unlimited use of force and cracking down on protests. But
so
it's
a banker's war. Agenda is a Saudi agenda that is using American military might. We told you about this. Folks, we've been telling you about this for so long. Now it comes out that $1 billion from Saudi Arabia to Egypt, or to the the pro-Muslim Brotherhood people. You can't make this stuff up. You cannot make this stuff up. And the mainstream media is turning a blind eye to this.
Yes, they are. For the most part, you don't. I wouldn't know. I haven't watched the news lately, but I doubt that they would make any big waves about this at all. As this goes to show the true agenda behind what's really going on. Also, Homeland Security loses track of 1 million foreigners. Report that could hurt an immigration deal.
Good job.
From the Washington Times, Homeland Security Department has lost track of more than 1 million people who knows it arrived in the U.S. and it cannot prove they left the country.
Well, here's the dimensionality that we offer. Joe, do you believe that they've lost track of that many people?
I think they know where everybody is.
Exactly. However, isn't it convenient timing, Joe, that they would say this in advance of this immigration deal, and we see the so-called conservative right, the Karl Rovian Republicans, the people who are supposed to be represent the conservative causes, acquiescing to an agenda that will slow walk the illegal immigrants in this country into legalization. We know what the agenda is, folks. It's being exposed for what it is. And once again, the Republicans, Democrats, two birds or two wings of the same bird. And that bird, we're getting the bird, I guess, we the American people. And wow, it's incredible. Don't believe what you hear and what you read. They know exactly where these people are.
One more headline, then we're going to go to calls. The Federal Reserve announces no changes, provides no further details on stimulus plans. The Federal Reserve announced it would maintain its current monetary policy Wednesday, in line with expectations that the central bank will begin with winding down its large-scale bond buying program at its meeting in September. The Fed, however, provided no further information about the schedule for tapering its stimulus purchases. It also acknowledged that the inflation has been running below its target, but will not take additional steps to raise inflation, as it expects inflation to rise towards its 2% target in the medium term.
Okay. Well, we're going to find soon the emperor has no clothes with respect to the economy. If you read sites like Zero Hedge and you just pick a site, an economic site, for real economic news, we know we're in trouble. I want to say thank you to Jim C. for sending us this email. Jim C., thank you very much. I won't disclose your last name. He writes this, and then I'm going to turn it back over to you, Joe. But he writes this, and folks, I think you should pay attention to this. Through all of the distractions and the continuous professional wrestling style political theater that we're seeing, the corrupt ones maintain their Middle East agenda, which is clearly to surround Israel with the Muslim Brotherhood-controlled countries. Look at a map, okay? But they're just not using our money. They're using our money to start a biblical war in the Middle East. And Jim references the presidential memorandum waiver of restriction on providing funds to the Palestinian Authority that was initiated July 26, 2013. And Joe, you talked about this. You brought this up, Public Law 112-74. And this is to lifting restrictions to provide funds to the Palestinian Authority by Barack Hussein Obama. Can it be any clearer? Are we not seeing a biblical war? The infrastructure for a war in the Middle East, just like Stan Deyo said, and folks, I'll tell you, we could wake up to the destruction of Damascus any day. I feel that.
Do you see? I'll have to find the article for you, but there was a picture from the London Telegraph or the Independent that showed the extent of the damage of homes, in Syria, pretty much the city was destroyed. It was obliterated, and just showing how bad of a situation it is in homes, let alone Damascus. The whole region is a war zone, over 100,000 dead civilians, and we are still in the middle of this conflict with no clear resolution in sight. And we're going to go to the phone lines now. So if you want to weigh in, 661-244-9839. We're going to go to area code 817 first. Thanks for holding. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Area code 817.
Oh, hi. This is Rick. How you doing?
Very good, Rick. What's on your mind tonight?
Hey, there was something I noticed last night. I had to move out of my apartment. I'm a Navy veteran, but I'm also working for the Navy as a civilian, and this sequester kind of bite in the rear end. But that's not the reason I'm calling. I noticed something lately, and I noticed it last night. There was some the grasshoppers. They were like on the pavement, and they weren't moving, and I actually thought maybe they were dead, but a couple of them did move, and I kicked them a little bit, but they didn't move, and I was packing most of the night and going outside, and the little critter was still there, and I saw a large moth. It was like they all looked like they were sick or they were stoned. That's the best way I explain it. They weren't moving. It just, I just thought maybe, yeah. I've noticed it before, but I don't really try to look at it. But it was just so interesting because they were not moving. I mean, they would jump if you try to move them a little bit, but they would just sit there. And all that evening until 1 o'clock in the morning, and then I saw them again until like 6 o'clock in the morning. They were still sitting where they're at. They're moving around a little bit, but they weren't going nowhere. I'm used to seeing insects and moths. This one large moth, always flying around, moving around. They just were not moving.
That's interesting. Yeah, you know what, caller? I've noticed we live in an area where across from our home is a wooded area, and so we have deer and other animals in that wooded area. And I've noticed a change in the behavior of the animals, and also, and caller, have you noticed too, since you're in that perhaps in a similar type of environment, have you noticed different sounds, for example, crickets and listeners, you might think I'm nuts, but it almost seems like they're emitting different sounds as well.
To be honest, not too much, because I like to be outside at times, but that's last night, because I've listened to your show as much as I can. I mean, your show should be called Intelligent something, because it's like the information and the guests you all have, and Steve Quayle and all them, it's just outstanding. But I've noticed that with the insects, and there used to be a lot of insects around lights, and now they just look like they're just kind of like they're just hanging out. It's like they're like they're stoned. They just don't want to move around. They just want to. They became lazy.
I wonder if it's harmonics in the. What do you think, Joe? Harmonics, environmental. I mean,
it could be environmental as far as the magnetics of the Earth. It could be frequencies. It could be a lot of different reasons. None of them are good, though, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. Well, caller, thanks, man. Have you anything else? Anything else? Any other observations?
I have a lot of questions, but like I said, on your show, I listen to as much as I can. But there's a lot of us out here that's just, it just for me, best way it really ticks me off is how they're taking our money away from us that we're supposed to earn, or we can't work. But then they turn around and give millions upon millions upon millions of dollars to people overseas, where they kill not only other Muslims, but they kill Christians and atheists. It just you know what I'm saying. I mean, it just makes me sick and I see a lot of homeless here in Austin, Texas, and now I'm sleeping in my vehicle, and I just kind of like, that's just part of life.
Wait a second. Wait a second. Did you just say you're sleeping in your vehicle?
Yes, sir.
You're homeless?
I don't really consider myself homeless because I got a vehicle.
The furloughs.
I just got to bite the bullet for a while because I'm just paying off some medical bills, and this sequester kind of bit me in the rear end. That's just yeah. I guess
Rick, why don't you send us an email at if you have internet access on your phone or whatever, send us an email. Just put on the subject line, "This is Rick," okay? And
okay.
I just want to talk to you off air. All right,
okay.
my friend. Give me some contact information. All right, my friend.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right.
Yeah, and that goes to show the state of a lot of people live like this.
Well, Joe. Yeah, and I'm not so sure the sequester can be blamed for it, but there's something more behind the sequester. It's not just the sequester. There's something else going on here on a larger scale, much larger scale, and I think that we're just seeing the beginning of it.
Yeah. Yeah, when you see that 4 out of 5 Americans living in poverty, most Americans who have a job living paycheck to paycheck,
yeah.
When you see the food stamps use at an all-time high, the disability at an all-time high, when you have more people taking from the system than you do paying in, on top of that, you have a government that is taking trillions of dollars that isn't even real to begin with, and funneling it in for their other purposes and projects. Of course it's going to all come collapsing down around us. There's no way to avoid it. And
kind of in the same, jumping a little bit, I guess, there was a report out, open season on Nigerian Christians by Muslim terrorists, but in a larger sense, there's a war against Christians all over the globe. In fact, every 5 minutes, somewhere in the Muslim world, a Christian is being killed just for being Christian. And I think, Joe and listeners, I believe this. I believe that we're going to be seeing this come to the United States. We've already seen this on a smaller scale. We've seen hate crimes, murders. And I don't like to use the phrase hate crimes, but we've seen murders of Christians.
There are hate crimes, though.
Well, yeah. All murders are hate crimes, I guess. But I guess as a motivation, just for being a Christian, or just and you don't hear about that. You hear about you hear about other things, but you don't hear about the Christians being targeted. And I believe that this is a one of those stories that is being covered up by the media.
Yeah. And we have another caller. We're going to go there now. Area code 405. We're coming to you next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey, hi. How you guys doing?
Very well, thanks. Great to hear from you. What's on your radar tonight?
I love your guest. You just, that guy was so right. You should be an intelligence report, the name or something. But just what that was going on about the insects too. And I know Dan Deo. He said he slept in because of his back. Well, he's good because I slept in because of my back too. But I have some leg pain, and it goes to my back, and it's been really bad lately. And I think I've noticed a lot of people. And Stan was saying about how the plates were really starting to act up some, and I think it's got to do with that, the insects. And Rose is just talking about she just came from New Zealand that you had on the other day. She just came from getting acupuncture, how it had helped her, because he was in a lot of pain. And I don't know. I just, I was thinking to tell you that, guys, and I didn't have that much to say. That was really, but I mean, I wasn't going to say nothing. But then he started going on about the insects acting weird like that, and I think you're right. It might be magnetic. Hello?
Yeah, I muted myself, I guess. Yeah, that could very well be the effect of magnetism on the body. I don't know. I do know, however, I've been talking to more and more people my age. My son is going to learn this, I have a feeling, the hard way, when he gets to be my age. But, that we're suffering more and more physically. We've got more aches, more pains, more joint pain, more. If you have arthritis, for example, it seems like more people are complaining of joint pain and bone pain, and so some is attributed to the weather, the dampness, the coldness, or the humidity.
I don't know. I go through that all the time, and I've been getting rid of a lot of the pain in my hip riding an exercise bike, but I'm telling you, it's been really rough the past few days. And I just, sometimes it's worse than others, like you said, the weather and stuff. And I'm sorry to hear you have that problem, some too. But I don't know. I just think, I was going to say something. I noticed everybody talking about it some. And, we get used to that stuff a lot. And then, I guess we pipe up some when it gets worse. But I was just thinking.
And who knows? I mean, we're seeing so many things affect. We're seeing so many things going on here. You've got the harmonics. You've got the magnetic issues. You've got all sorts of things.
That star, it's the Star of David is a 6 point also, isn't it? I mean, it's not just that it's. You think that it's just the that showed up over the North Pole? That's so weird, right?
I'm not familiar what you're talking about, actually.
What you were just talking about Stan Dale with? You were asking
on Saturn. On Saturn, the hexagram or hexagon that showed up on the Saturn's North Pole.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of inclined to believe what Stan said. It's kind of a natural phenomena. But
when you look at how frequencies affect water, you can get that shape from a certain frequency on a drop of water. I see.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. In fact,
is 6 point also?
They're like snowflakes. Each frequency will bring a different manipulation to the droplet of water to where they will turn into 6 to 8 to 12 to who knows how many points can be reached. It's amazing what frequencies will do to matter.
Huh. Okay, I'll let you guys go talk about more important stuff, but I just thought I'd mention that. And I don't forget, I love you guys, and I'm always listening.
Well, God bless you.
And I talk to Rose all the time now. I talk to them guys over there in New Zealand, so thank you for hooking us up.
Okay. Well, God bless you. Rose Page, a great lady. Thanks, caller.
Yeah.
God bless you.
Okay.
All right, we're gonna cut you loose. Yeah, Rose Page, we've gotten a lot of comments about that show from
and Mr. Hodges.
Yes, exactly. Folks, if you haven't had an opportunity, go back through our archives. Now, I know, this is pointed out to me, our archive page on our website is not up to date, but if you go to the RSS feed, the little tab on the right-hand side of our homepage, you can where it says. Just let me be clear here, where it says subscribe to our audio or podcast feed now. If you click on that, it'll take you to our complete archive section. Also, we have through our producer, Mitch Santel, a lot of our audio on SoundCloud, which is just a tremendous, in iTunes, but SoundCloud, just a very tremendous audio feature as well. We're going to be...
so our audio's in a cloud?
My head's in the cloud. Your head's is in the cloud.
No, I always see the references to the, storing things in the Google Cloud or all these different, I never get a good feeling about that. It just seems like you're putting it up there and anybody can grab it that would want to. But I understand for show purposes.
But you know what though, I think you make an interesting point.
With your smartphones, it'll ask if you want your contacts as part of this cloud.
Yeah, I don't understand, and maybe a caller much smarter than the two of us combined could explain the cloud, whatever that is. Not SoundCloud, but the cloud. I don't get that.
Yeah, no, I can understand, like I said, with media, things that need to go out and people are putting out there for other people to hear, but for things like private contacts, your private photos and videos, not too settling to see or be asked to put that as in part of a cloud out there. We're going to move on to the callers, area code 941. We're coming to you next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Very well. What's on your mind tonight?
Well, I live in Florida, and I've seen a lot of Black Hawk helicopters flying around our area.
What area of Florida?
North, south, east, west?
South.
Okay. So like Miami-Dade or Dade County or in that area, or are we talking?
About the
we're not. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say rural or city.
Okay.
Yeah, like below Tampa.
Okay. All right. That's fine. Okay. When you say you did say Black Hawk helicopters?
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yep.
Okay. An increase in the flyovers?
Every couple months they'll come by and they'll fly real low. They'll go to the nearest airport that's close to me and do whatever they're doing, and they'll take off and then go south again.
So this is a marked increase, is what you're telling us, of military Black Hawk helicopters in your area, the activity. This is a marked increase. Yeah,
like every couple months, you'll see one during the middle of the day or the end of the day, and my wife pointed out to me that when she saw it and she called me, the doors were open, so whatever they were doing, it was a little strange.
Yeah, okay. I see some reports on here of Black Hawks being reported throughout Florida. More about the Miami and that mock machine gun firing they were doing in, what was this, just not too long ago. They called them the martial law drills here on these YouTube videos. But there was an increase in Air Force vehicles and military vehicles all across the country in the air.
Yeah, and it's very concerning because it's like, what are they doing? It's scary because when you have a kid, you don't know how to protect somebody. If you don't know what's coming, you don't know where to go.
Yeah, child or not, but it could be very traumatic to a child. And caller, what I would urge you to do is certainly, fear is contagious. I don't know whether you've ever felt that, or, ladies and gentlemen, if you've ever been in a situation, fear is sometimes contagious. Certainly, be strong for your child, but be also aware and of your surroundings. But yeah, I got a bad feeling about the unnecessary urban practices, if you will, or urban exercises, because the liability surrounding those exercises is tremendous.
Yeah. Well, the reason I'm very concerned about it is because of what your caller or your guest was talking about. I think it was yesterday. With V in The Economist.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. He was saying that the first thing they do is lock down airports. Well, there's an airport real close to us, and I kind of live in a small city, and it's very easy to be locked down.
Well, right, and I think that if you do have to get out of Dodge, so to speak, your options are going to be limited. The first to go is going to be the airports, I would suspect, and then of course the interstates. So it's a good thing, caller. It would be a good thing if you're concerned about having to leave your area. Go back to the good old days when we used maps, paper maps, and have one in your car or in your bug-out bag, if you will, and learn the back roads, because that's more difficult for a lockdown. And I know that's kind of getting off the path of your call, but
no,
it's a
I
point
understand.
That, yeah.
And the other thing I want to tell you is, since the first time I recalled, there's been the storms here in Florida have been just really bad. We've had hailstorms more than I've ever remembered. It's it's just odd.
Wow.
Yeah, we've heard reports of very strange weather all throughout the country, whether it be lightning, thunder, cool to hot, from the bugs, and things are changing. You have to keep your eyes open. And
yeah, you know what, Joe? Let me just mention this real quick, because Stan was talking about this in caller. If the chemtrail or the chemical spraying for good, we'll say for supposed good purposes, if that was started for that, the law of unintended consequences, could cause the byproduct of that spraying could cause storms. So you just don't know. I mean, we're on a path to find out what's really going on, and we're learning together. But caller, your observations are noted, and we're going to be keeping an eye on that area of the country, your area of the country, to match your information with other information. So keep listening, my friend.
Oh, every day I listen. Thank you.
All right. God bless you, my friend.
Thanks for the call.
Yeah. Very interesting about the military. I've been getting emails here pretty much the last, 2 weeks about an increase of military sightings of military aircraft and even military assets moving around.
Yeah. We're going to move on here. Area code 918. We're coming to you next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hi, Doug and Joe. It's Todd from Tulsa. How are you?
Very well, Todd from Tulsa. Say hello to Pat Campbell, my good friend in Tulsa, KFAQ.
Yeah, will do. Hey, I just a quick call, because I know you want to get some more callers in. But as an old Navy guy myself, and hearing that caller calling, it just made me think. You guys have had incredible guests this week. I consistently learn more than I could ever contribute to your show and to the chat family. But I wanted to, if I could. I had a book that was given to me when I first gave my life to the Lord, and it's called No Atheists in Foxholes. And I remembered a prayer in here that I think is fitting, and I'd like to pray it for that caller that called in.
Sure, absolutely.
It's the 23rd Psalm for sailors. This is actually coming out of a Homer Hickman book. But it says, the Lord is my skipper. I shall not drift. He guides me across the dark waters. He steers me through the channels, and he keeps my log. Yea, though I sail amidst the tempest of the sea, I shall keep my wits about me. His strength is my shelter. He prepareth a quiet harbor before me. Surely the sun and the stars shall guide me, and I will come to rest in heaven's port forever. Amen.
Beautiful, beautiful. Amen.
Thank you, guys.
Well,
I'll let you go so you can take some more callers. God bless you both.
Todd. God bless.
Bye-bye.
Have a great night.
Interesting. I like that.
Psalm
like
23.
Yeah. No atheists in foxholes. And that's...
Don't say that if you're in the military.
Yeah, not today.
Mickey Weinstein, sniffing around your office there pretty soon.
Yeah.
Moving right along, area code 912. We're coming to you next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hi, Joe and Doug. How are you this evening?
Very well. What's up with you?
Outstanding. Well, hey, I've been listening to you for a long time, and the Lord blessed me with exposing me and opening my eyes a long time ago, about 15, 20 years ago. So I've been really blessed at being very awake as to what's going on. And I really wanted to call. It's my first time, and wanted to call and share with you a little bit about, you had some questions about the cloud, right, and what that entails.
Yes.
And so, I've worked in technology about 20 years, and what the cloud really is just think of kind of like the NSA data center in Utah, right?
No,
just
I prefer not to. Okay.
Right.
Sorry.
Right. Well, there are facilities like that all over the planet, and what essentially a cloud is it's a series of systems and storage associated with those systems, which merely house your data. And what makes it a cloud is its portability and the ability to move that data from facility to facility depending on the level of service that's required, as well as the level of resiliency to disaster or power outage or whatever it might be. So in effect, it's no different than your PC at home. It's just a larger version, and it's also networked around the globe. So,
wow.
A lot of people overcomplicate the cloud, and think it's this, mysterious thing. It's really not. It's very simple.
Wow. Well, boy, I really appreciate the and thank you for talking to me like explaining it in the most simplest terms. Because look, when it comes to computers, I can't even keep my half the time I mute myself without even knowing it. So, I'm a simple kind of guy. So, but that explanation, thank you for that. So really, then, it's just a fancy word for a portable server, if you will, or a portable hard drive, I guess.
It is. And one of my colleagues years ago, he said, Dave, don't overcomplicate things. He says at the very lowest level, he says, what is a computer? He says it is literally a bunch of zeros and ones that are being communicated and translated everywhere. Don't overcomplicate it. It's actually very simple.
Wow. Well, you certainly solved that for us. Thank you for that.
You bet. And there was one other thing, and I want you to get on to some other callers. My name is David. I'm actually down in the Southeast. I've lived in several parts of the country, so it's nice to enjoy all the different parts of the country. And I've traveled all over the globe. I've been a salesman for many, many years, and have been slowly watching, this encroachment of, the police state, not only here in America, right, but seeing it on a global basis. This is a global phenomenon. It's not something that's localized here to the U.S. It's a little more obvious here in the U.S. because we are used to, being in such a free country. But, one of the important things I wanted to leave, the other listeners with is this, is that, what's the rule, what's the main rule around a vampire, and what is the only way that a vampire can come in your house?
If you let him in, right?
You've got to invite him in. So to your point earlier when you mentioned this to the caller as far as lending yourself to fear, right, and feeding the fear, it's very important because, John mentioned this earlier in terms of it being a spiritual battle.
Yes.
If people only understood how much of a spiritual battle and an energetic battle this really is. So it's imperative that all of our listeners and peers that are out there don't allow yourself to feed and give their paradigms energy, right? It's important for you to focus on energy that's going to more or less facilitate, the creation and intention of how you want to live, right? And what is the life that you want to be and that you want to manifest.
In other words, think positive and you have a goal in mind. Well, think positive is what you're saying, as opposed, and don't let fear overcome you. And if you have faith, faith is going to replace fear.
And
absolutely. No, hey, go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say what you're saying is exactly right on the money. We become what we think about. If we're always thinking negatively, looking at every situation we come across in a bad way, our attitudes are going to always be negative. Our thoughts are going to be negative. We're going to start to expect the negative things, even when they're positive.
Exactly. So number one, don't let the vampire in, and number two, and I'll leave you with this. Right, the only reason that the manipulators behind the scenes, the dark energies, right? We're just seeing the very surface of it, right? At the very lowest levels, this thing is very deep. It's universal in scope, right? It's very large. The other important thing to remember is the only reason that they are throwing all of the different control mechanisms and influential mechanisms at us, whether it's chemtrails or, RF or, GMO or whatever it may be, is it's a testament to the power of the human spirit and the power of the human body. The only reason they're doing that is because we are so powerful. So just remember that as well.
Okay.
Well, thank you for the excellent call. We're going to move on, and God bless you.
Thanks.
God bless you as well. Thanks for all you do.
And safe travels.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on. We got another caller on hold, area code 727. We're coming to you next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hello?
Yes, that's you, 727.
Oh, yes. Hey, hello. First-time caller.
Great to have you.
I just started listening. Yeah. Just started listening to you guys maybe about 3 months ago, but I've been doing research, became a Christian in 2006, and I've definitely gone through a lot of the experiences that some of your callers have been talking about on, all the disturbances, and just like your last caller was talking about, letting vampires in and being spiritual and letting the Holy Ghost guide us as Christians and not being afraid. And really realizing who we're anchored into, and that's Christ, and knowing our position in Christ. And like he was saying, all these demonic things attacking us as Christians, we shouldn't be afraid. We should walk in the light as he is in the light. And as Christians, that's what we need to continue to pray for and profess over ourselves, over our families, and over the situations that are going on in the world. Because these guys, again, like he was saying, our human spirit is so strong, the soul, because if we know where we come from, we shouldn't be afraid of what they're going to throw at us, because we're believers in Christ, and we're soldiers, and we're going to defeat the enemy, because that's what they're afraid of. When we start confronting them and their fear that they throw at us, even though they may throw whatever they want at us, they still don't have that power and authority, because the devil doesn't have that authority over the believer.
The devil does not have the authority. I like that, and I believe that to be the case. No.
Yeah, they use those 4 horsemen powers, demonic powers that they want to, the Black Pope, all those powers that try to come against the believers, we rebuke them in the name of Jesus, because we hold the power in Christ Jesus, and we profess and we pray over every single believer in Christ Jesus. He gave me the gift of speaking in tongues. If you're out there, listeners, and you speak in tongues and you pray in the Holy Ghost all the time, and don't let them put fear into you. They may try to attempt to throw fear at you. They'll come at you in all different directions, because once you're awoken and they know you're walking in faith in the Holy Ghost, because now you're in charge and you're walking and being led by the Holy Ghost through all this demonic principality that they've set up, because they know about it. They've taken it all from the ancient times, from Egypt, Babylon, and all that stuff. They took all those occulted spirits and those powers, and they use them in the universe with all the radio waves that they try to throw at us and control us in our mind telepathically. And that's how they try to do it, through fear. But if you're really anchored in Christ and you got the Holy Ghost, they can't knock you down. And that's what they don't like, because now you're connected to Papa God in the heavens. And they can't come against you there, because now you know the truth about what's in the Word of God. And that's your anchor, and that's your guide, Jesus Christ and the Holy Ghost. Become one with you and the believer. And in that, then they can again knock you down and take that revelation away from you as a child of God.
Very well said, caller. And folks, take heed, because what this caller is saying is absolutely true. And we have the power within ourselves. Well, not within ourselves, but through God. You're absolutely correct. So, wow.
So just
thank you so much.
Pray. And I pray for all my brothers and sisters out there, wherever you may be. I'm always keeping you guys in prayer in my private time, all the time, day in and day out.
Well, thank you so much. And we're humbled by that. And you know what, caller? We keep our listeners in prayer all the time as well, for your protection and for guidance, and prayers to me as a male over 50, I've realized the power of prayer. And
amen.
Shalom. God bless you, my friend. Thanks for the call.
God bless you.
All right. Joe, just real quick, I want to tell you this. I was driving today, and folks, it's just share this with you. I was driving, and you know how you I listen to two different.
Was suspended.
It should be, folks. It should be. Okay, I admit it. Now, when I start driving on the sidewalks, and it will be. Although I did drive an ambulance on the sidewalk one time, but that's a story for another day. I gotta say this. I listened to two different talk shows. I was out during a time when I think Herman Cain was on, and then Limbaugh came on. It was two different talk shows, two different channels. But this show to me is a little bit different. I believe our callers, the quality of our callers, the quality of our listeners, compared to what I heard today. And it seems like increasingly I'm not able to listen to other shows as much, but just when you get that and the content of the programming, I'm not boasting or anything like that, but I think that we have a pretty diverse content where we're not beating a single drum or singing a single note, and I think that's part of the attraction of this program, where we try to bring as much information relevant to what's going on today, not clouded by political agendas. Just wanted to say that to you. I just noticed that.
We don't care about politics.
No.
Well, we did have a great guest on last night. I think the first politician on our show.
Yes.
David Vanderbeek. That was last night, and V was the night before.
That's correct, yes.
Just to clear that one up. But, this week has been fantastic. And with guests, we had Pastor Langford on Sunday with Steve, and we had V on Monday with Steve Quill. Both Sunday and Monday were both powerful shows. Last night we had David Leroy Vanderbeek, the Nevada runner, running for governor of Nevada 2014.
I got to correct you. It's David Lory, L-O-R-Y Vanderbeek. But you know what? We look forward, folks, to a number of. If we're not going to tell you because we have to firm some things up, but through Mitch, our producer Mitch, who is working tirelessly, and I want to thank him publicly.
Yeah, we got some good things lined up.
Boy, I'll tell you, buckle up, because the next month or so is going to be just incredible in terms of guests that we've got. So spread the word about the program.
Yeah, I want to put this in our chat here. I don't know how many of you guys, I forgot to ask Stan about this on air, because I know he attended this. There was a Pikes Peak Summit, a prophecy meeting, and there are, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 people that gave presentations here. Half of the people are or were guests on our show. You have Russ Dizdar, Paul McGuire, Stan Monteith, L.A. Marzulli, Jonathan Kahn, Bill Salas, Chris Putnam, Doug Hamp. The list goes on. And they talk about like Chris Putnam. He gave a seminar or a lecture on ET disclosure, end time delusion, aliens versus demons, how the New Age agenda and the thinking and the social manipulation of thinking changed the way children to people think that, you know, Earth is just a regular planet of billions of planets and life here. To think that we're the only planet with life is, you know, very arrogant, and we were created is very arrogant. Just showing the different viewpoints presented in colleges, schools,
right.
And
that's the New Age,
right.
New Age agenda,
and how we are ripe for a secular, a half even Christian, all secular people to accept basically an alien deception. And that's the only one out of these presentations I watched. But you go to prophecyinthenewsvideos.com/video.php.
Yeah, they're going to remember that, right?
Well, yeah, to rewind it.
I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to, I'll put that up on our website here in the next 12 hours, the link to to those videos, because it's really absolutely interesting. I mean, tremendous.
Yeah. And when talking with Holly Dale the other day, she mentioned this and said that there was an overwhelming theme that people, the presenters there had, that, you know, things were dire, things were short, time was short.
Yeah, in talking with Holly and Stan Dale both, they're of the opinion that you know, time is growing short, and we do need to prepare. And I just want to thank Stan and Holly Dale especially for, if you go to standale.com, please, ladies and gentlemen, there is so much information that Holly is providing to all of us. Basic information. You don't have to have a lot of money. It's practical advice. Just go to standale.com, click on the upper left-hand tab. I think it's free preparation information or something like that. And I'll have it open right here in front of me. But there's so much information. Here it is, free prep info. It's the orange tab on the upper left-hand side of standale.com. On the left-hand side of that page, there are so many resources available to all of us